Chapter 26-24. Xian. Yiqing Luo struggled to break free from Diamo Xian's arms. Even though he had discovered that Miao Rongrong was going to make a move on Diamo Xian, then she tried to stop Miao Rongrong. It seemed like a long time. In reality, it only took a few breaths. Her struggles to Diamo Xian were of no use. He could only watch helplessly. Miao Rongrong's face, which was filled with a maniacal smile, grew larger in front of his eyes. Yiqing Luo saw it clearly. In Miao Rongrong's hand was a palm-sized transparent porcelain bottle, and she threw it onto Diamo Xian's back. Inside the porcelain bottle was a thick red liquid that looked like human blood. What made Yiqing Luo's expression change abruptly and her pupils constricted? Floating in the middle of the liquid was a little bug that was not much bigger than an ant. The insect was greenish-black in color. It was extremely obvious in the blood-colored liquid. Goo worms? Goo worms again. Although Yiqing Luo didn't know much about venomous insects. However, when he saw that this strange insect was taken out from Miao Rongrong's hands, he couldn't help but frown. It could only be the goo worms. Yiqing Luo tried her best to raise her hand, trying to wave the porcelain bottle away. But the moment that porcelain bottle smashed onto Diamo Xian's body, then it shattered into pieces. That greenish-black goo worm was moving at the speed of light, fusing into Diamo Xian's skin. Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes surfaced a murderous chill as she struggled even harder. Her widened eyes gradually reddened. The goo worm had entered Diamo Xian's body. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Yiqing Luo felt that the man who was hugging her tightly seemed to have become heavier. Yiqing Luo felt flustered and raised her hand to push Diamo Xian's chest, trying to raise her head to look at the man's face. But Diamo Xian's long arm covered her head tightly. Above her head, the man's low and steady voice floated down. I'm fine. Are you stupid? Based on your speed, you should have been able to avoid it. Yiqing Luo's voice was almost choking. No matter how steady Diamo Xian's voice was, no matter how he acted as if nothing had happened, Yiqing Luo could also guess it. Diamo Xian was definitely not fine like what he said. Otherwise, it was impossible for Diamo Xian to stop her from raising her head. You're right behind me. Diamo Xian hugged her tightly. Trust me, I'm really fine. Just let me hug you for a while. A few simple sentences. As strong as Yiqing Luo was, her tears still rolled down uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes. Her little hands clutched the front of Diamo Xian's robes tightly, because she was behind him. If he dodged, Miao Rongrong's goo worm would land on her. So, he chose to protect her and suffered the pain of the parasite entering his body. It was all because of her. If it wasn't for her, Xian wouldn't have been poisoned. You didn't expect this, did you? After all the planning, you still can't escape this fate. Miao Yixiong laughed proudly. His eyes were ruthless and murderous as he looked at the two people hugging in front of him. The plan succeeded. The plan succeeded? That's not a love goo. Miao Rongrong, who had successfully implanted the goo worm into Diamo Xian's body, took on the palm strike which Yiqing Luo struck out in a fit of rage. Miao Rongrong seemed to have lost half of her life as she laid on the ground, barely breathing. Miao Yixiong bared his teeth. Not a love goo? What kind of goo is that? How dare you hide a goo worm behind my back? Miao Rongrong's lips twitched weakly. She didn't bother about Miao Yixiong. Chapter 26-25. Trash. Miao Yixiong scolded angrily. Damn it. He thought that Miao Rongrong that trash had become smarter and learned to hold back. She finally managed to implant a goo worm into the overlord. But it wasn't the love worm in the plan? His chilly eyes narrowed into a slit as he stared coldly at the young lady who had her back facing him, nestled in the man's arms, sobbing softly. The madness in his eyes gradually turned sinister. He swiftly raised his right hand and covered his chest. His 5 fingers suddenly curled. His sharp fingernails scratched the skin on his chest. 5 fingers sank into his own chest. The two of them who were hugging each other sensed a surge of profound chi fluctuation. Yiqing Luo was hugged tightly by the man and was unable to struggle free. She could only vaguely see. Miao Yixiong's palm was filled with red blood. The thick blood gradually took shape in his palm. Compared to the goo worm that Miao Rongrong threw onto Diamo Xian, it was several times bigger. Miao Yixiong actually hid the goo worm in his profound jade heart. No wonder she and Diamo Xian had not sensed any signs of life from Miao Yixiong. Sealed in the profound jade heart. No one would be able to sense it, but it was impossible for Miao Yixiong not to know. To nurture such an evil thing in the profound jade heart. It would affect his body. If his luck was bad, there was a possibility of being devoured by the goo worm. Miao Yixiong actually used such a method to hide the goo worm for them? Ah Xian. Let's go quickly. For Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's conversation earlier, Miao Rongrong had poisoned Diamo Xian. It wasn't planned by the father and daughter pair, but Miao Rongrong's selfishness. That ant-sized goo worm was different from the goo worm that Miao Yixiong wanted to plant. Miao Yixiong had painstakingly planned for such a long time. It was to implant the goo worm in his hands into Diamo Xian's body. That goo worm? There was definitely a huge problem. Hugging the man's waist tightly, Yiqing Luo prepared to move along with him. But the man's body was as hard as a rock. She couldn't move him at all. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's voice trembled as she realized that the goo worm which was implanted into Diamo Xian's body was much more harmful than what she had imagined. Obviously Diamo Xian now. Unable to move. She bit her lower lip and both her hands hugged Diamo Xian's waist tightly. Chi, come over and bring Ah Xian away. Her back was almost to Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong still had the strength to take out that goo worm from the profound heart jade. He would definitely have the strength to poison them. Diamo Xian's body had already been implanted with a goo worm. He absolutely could not let Miao Yixiong implant the goo worm into Diamo Xian's body again. Yiqing Luo could feel the biting cold air and the fluctuation of the air behind her. But she couldn't hide. Just like before when Diamo Xian blocked in front of her. There was no turning back, no hesitation. Because she was hiding. Miao Yixiong's goo worm would be implanted into Diamo Xian. But what Yiqing Luo didn't expect was, when Miao Yixiong saw her back, he had already changed his target. His current target was aimed at Yiqing Luo. The Overlord's ability was unfathomable. Even if he was poisoned by the goo worm, it didn't mean that he had lost the ability to battle. Rather than to poison the Overlord. Why not? Poison Yi Luo, that slut. At least Yi Luo was easier to control. As long as he controlled Yi Luo, would the Overlord not surrender obediently? Perhaps. Chapter 26. This thought made Miao Yixiong's heart like a demon. He was mumbling, Yi Luo, Yi Luo, Yi Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't know that Miao Yixiong had already targeted her. But even if she knew, she wouldn't avoid him at all. Yiqing Luo's back was facing Miao Yixiong. Other than sensing that Miao Yixiong was getting closer, she didn't notice that. Miao Yixiong's crazed and malevolent face, that pair of vicious eyes lingered. That wisp of faintly discernible black aura. It was fleeting. No one could catch it. Chi heard Yiqing Luo's command and let out a low growl. Its tiger claws slammed hard on the ground. The tiny kitten body suddenly transformed into an ordinary-sized white tiger. It opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth, gleaming coldly. Chi-Chi's speed was extremely fast. Within a few breaths, it had already rushed to Diamo Xian's back. It opened its mouth and was about to bite Diamo Xian's robe. Ah woo! A low growl was heard, Chi-Chi's teeth collided. Bit empty air. At the same time, Miao Yixiong's palm was full of blood, with a goo worm stuck in the blood, following the swift and fierce palm wind, heading straight for Yiqing Luo's back. Yi Luo. Obediently become my dog. Miao Yixiong laughed arrogantly, his voice was hoarse. Manchester United went crazy. Just as that palm was about to land on Yiqing Luo, she felt. The man whose body was as hard as a rock, unable to move no matter what. Suddenly her body surged with a scorching heat. That scorching feeling almost scalded her hand, which was tightly wrapped around his waist. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened, her body left Diamo Xian's and looked up at him. Her eyes were covered by the man's warm and broad palm. Bam! Yiqing Luo's body suddenly staggered as she was pulled by the man, her footsteps were messy and she almost fell into the man's arms. At the same time, what entered her ears was the sound of the palm wind landing on her body. Her spine stiffened. Gradually his entire body stiffened a little. Miao Yixiong's palm had hit. However, she did not feel the pain that she had imagined. He didn't feel any goo worm entering his body either. Then she thought of the man's sudden tightening of his arms and the stagger under his feet. Her heart skipped a beat. It was as if something was clutching her heart tightly. Even her breathing had become a little more difficult. Ah Xian, there was a hint of choking in her voice. What are you doing? She tried to look up. However, the large palm that was covering her eyes was tightly pressed against her eyes. Beside her ear, was the man's dark and hoarse voice, bit by bit, fiddling with her heart. "Don't cry. If you cry, I will be sad." It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. The moment he opened his mouth, Yiqing Luo listened to that voice which was filled with love and heartache. She could only feel the guilt in her heart surging to her eyes. She simply couldn't hold it in. Tears wet the man's clothes. How could she not understand? Earlier, when Diamo Xian's body was emitting a scorching aura, she could still feel the robust, profound energy surging within his body. Diamo Xian had used his own profound energy to break through the goo worm which had entered his body. He did this just to protect her once again. "Miao Yixiong, I want you to die." Chapter 26-27. Miao Yixiong. He dared to make a move on Xian. Even if he died 1,000 times, 10,000 times, it would not be enough to repay for what he had done to Xian. She wanted Miao Yixiong to suffer and die in pain. Yiqing Luo's rationality was gradually swallowed up. The profound jade heart in her chest also gradually became scorching hot. Her eyes at this moment were filled with a blood-like coquettish and gloomy coldness. The current Yiqing Luo was like an azura from hell. Her entire person was filled with a bloodthirsty, sadistic cold intent. "Ah ha ha. Want my life? Ha ha ha. Without the overlord you still want my life?" Miao Yixiong laughed sinisterly. He stood up shakily. On his chest, there was still blood gushing out from the hole that his 5 fingers had pierced. The thick liquid soaked his clothes. He didn't seem to notice it at all. His ruthless eyes crazily and proudly looked at Yiqing Luo. Towards Yiqing Luo's murderous intent, he had no fear at all. "What did you do to Xian?" Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes, coquettish and cold, like a sharp blade, ruthlessly cutting Miao Yixiong's skin. "Ha ha. I didn't intend to do anything to him, but a freak combination of factors let my plan succeed." Miao Yixiong laughed even more crazily. "From now onwards, Diamo Xian is my Miao Gu family's dog." Oh. Behind her, Chi-Chi's tiger roar suddenly came out. This roar also called back a trace of Yiqing Luo's rationality. Yiqing Luo turned her head. She saw the man who forcefully used his profound energy to break through the goo worm entering his body, fell straight down. Xian. Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes flashed. The murderous intent gradually dissipated. The surging emotions in her chest were also suppressed. She flew swiftly towards Diamo Xian, trying to catch his fallen body. Oh. Chi-Chi was already lying under Diamo Xian. The soft fur firmly caught Diamo Xian. Xian. Yiqing Luo half squatted beside Diamo Xian, raised her hand and touched his face. It was cold to the touch. Beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Ah! Miao Yixiong's wild laughter was extremely loud. He laughed heartily, as though the humiliation which they had suffered from Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian for the past few days had been returned to them by several folds. Looking at the unconscious Diamo Xian. Then he looked at Yi Luo, whose face was full of heartache and whose eyes were still dripping with tears. He felt more and more satisfied. "Yi Luo, don't worry and die. Our Miao Gu deathly silence will definitely take good care of this dog." His words fell. Miao Yixiong's ferocious and violent attack had already overtaken Yiqing Luo's direction. This tyrannical power? It was absolutely not the same strength he had when he was facing Diamo Xian. Yiqing Luo's keen senses told her that something was amiss. She lowered her voice and reminded Chi-Chi, "Take good care of Xian. Don't let anyone near him." Soon after, with a flick of his fingers, the devouring flame fan in his hand abruptly stirred up a whirlwind, bringing with it a ferocious and chilling killing intent as it met Miao Yixiong's attack. Seeing Yiqing Luo's counterattack, Miao Yixiong's twisted face curled into a treacherous and complacent sneer, as though he was ridiculing Yiqing Luo for taking the bait. Chapter 26-28. Just as Miao Yixiong finished his words, a strong gust of wind swept through the entire bedroom. Miao Yixiong opened his palm towards Miao Rongrong's direction. That hurricane lifted Miao Rongrong's body into Miao Yixiong's palm. Miao Yixiong casually threw Miao Rongrong to Diamo Xian's side. With this fall, Miao Rongrong felt as if her internal organs were about to be shattered. She endured the pain. She had no time to care about the bleeding wound on her body. Bit by bit, she moved towards Diamo Xian. "Get lost. Miao Rongrong, if you dare to get close to my man, I will make you beg for death." Yiqing Luo's eyes were bloodshot as she stared straight at Miao Rongrong. The extreme chill was bone-chilling. It made Miao Rongrong freeze on the spot. Ah Wu. Taking advantage of Miao Rongrong's momentary daze, Chi-Chi opened its mouth and bit Miao Rongrong's arm with its sharp teeth. Miao Rongrong screamed. Fresh blood flowed out from Chi-Chi's mouth. She could vaguely hear the sound of bones breaking. Yi Luo soon. Your overlord will open his eyes, but by then what awaits you will be... You know. Yiqing Luo was about to rush to Dmo Xian's side to stop Miao Rongrong from getting close. Miao Yixiong pestered Yiqing Luo again. He laughed sinisterly as if he had already imagined what would happen when Dmo Xian opened his eyes. His face was filled with a complacent smile. What did Miao Yixiong's words mean? What kind of poison did he cast on Dmo Xian? Yiqing Luo's heart was getting more and more flustered. Towards Miao Yixiong, who was pestering her, her attacks became more and more severe. But she didn't know why. This Miao Yixiong, who was obviously not that powerful and was afraid of death. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds. She couldn't break free from Miao Yixiong's pestering. On the other side, even though Miao Rongrong's arm was bitten by Chi-Chi, she still stubbornly climbed to Dmo Xian's side. That face, which was distorted due to pain, was filled with a crazy smile. She stared at Dmo Xian's face in a daze. Her blood-stained hands wanted to caress his face. But when he saw the blood on his fingertips, she paused. Then he laughed foolishly. Lord Overlord is so noble and elegant. I'm very dirty now, so I can't dirty you. Later. I'll let you hug me and you'll have to hug me. My Lord Overlord, roar. Hearing Miao Rongrong's words, Chi-Chi's eyes were filled with anger. The Overlord belongs to Master. The Overlord can only belong to the Master. This roar. Chi-Chi did not control her strength well. With a crack, Miao Rongrong's right arm was bitten off. Blood spurted out. Miao Rongrong did not respond. Her eyes stared unblinkingly at Dmo Xian. It was obvious that he had become an idiot. This scene fell into Yiqing Luo's eyes. She evaded Miao Yixiong's attacks while keeping an eye on Dmo Xian's situation. When he saw Miao Rongrong's abnormal reaction, he felt a chill run down his spine. Her heart skipped a beat. An extremely ominous premonition began to spread in his heart. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Miao Rongrong's performance was even scarier than that idiot. Her own arm was bitten off, but she didn't feel any pain at all. And Miao Yixiong, what on earth was going on? To be able to use his profound grade to fight her to a draw in just a few days? No, it was not a draw. Because Miao Yixiong did not use his full strength. He was just trying to delay time. Chapter 26-29. Girl, don't let Miao Rongrong get close to Sovereign. Yiqing Luo felt a burning sensation on her wrist and heard Old Man Song's urgent voice in her mind. You must go to the Overlord's side immediately. Otherwise, even a venerable sovereign would not be able to resist the corrosion of the goo poison. Yiqing Luo heard the urgency in Old Man Song's tone. What kind of venom did they use on Ah Xian? That's love goo. Old Man Song quickly explained. The host implanted with the love goo will faint for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. During this time, the love goo will completely invade the host's consciousness. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the first person that the host sees when he opens his eyes will be the person that he is attached to and devoted all of his affection to. Old Man Song's words made Yiqing Luo's heart violently tremble. It was as if something had pierced her heart. Miao Yixiong wants to use the love goo to control Dizun and make him fall in love with Miao Rongrong. Old Man Song's tone became more and more urgent. Girl, you can't let Dizun become attached to Miao Rongrong. Otherwise, with Dizun's strength and character, he would rather die than listen to the Miao tribe's orders. Yiqing Luo's fingers curled up as she looked at Dmo Xian. Her heart convulsed and it was hard for her to breathe. This was, with Ah Xian's temperament. He was controlled by a goo worm. He would rather perish indiscriminately. Furthermore, it was the Miaogu clan that wanted to control him. In other words, it was necessary to control him to hurt her and the people around her. How could Ah Xian bear to do that? She did not know how powerful the goo poison was. However, he also believed that it wasn't a coincidence that the Miao tribe had survived for nearly 1,000 years. She could not let Ah Xian become a puppet of the Miaogu family. You're so worried about a man that you don't even care about your own life? Miao Yixiong's cold laughter rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo was in a daze. This gave Miao Yixiong an opportunity to strike his palm on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Yiqing Luo took a few steps back. The sharp pain in her shoulder made her face slightly pale. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she placed one hand on the shoulder that was hit. From the corner of her eyes, she glanced at Diamo Xian's direction. His heart burned with anxiety. From the time Diamo Xian was implanted with the venom, it had already been at least half an incense's time. Miao Yixiong would never give her a chance to get close to Diamo Xian. What should she do? Miao Rongrong, that lunatic, in order to gain Diamo Xian's attention. She didn't even care about her own life. If this went on, sooner or later, it would be too late for Diamo Xian to open his eyes. Old Man Song's voice sounded again. Following Old Man Song's surprised tone, Yiqing Luo felt the scorching heat on her arm and quickly shifted to her shoulder. Old Man Song continued, No. Little girl, Miao Yixiong's power is completely different from before. Yiqing Luo's expression was grave as she nodded lightly. I know. She had fought with Miao Yixiong before. How could he not know Miao Yixiong's strength? The palm landed on her shoulder. She was even more certain of her guess. This Miao Yixiong. Otherwise he would find their Miao Gu tribe's forbidden Gu worms and raise his strength for a short period of time. Either that was the mysterious person who had come into contact with Miao Rongrong, the one who had surpassed the Nirvana realm, had helped him. She still remembered the time when Miao Rongrong was imprisoned in the Battle King's residence by Yuan Zhan. Miao Rongrong had met that mysterious person. At that time, even Jun Qingwu had some fear towards that person's strength. If it was because of that mysterious person. Chapter 2630. No, what I mean is... Old Man Song lowered his voice. This palm wind of his carries a very familiar power. Familiar? Yiqing Luo's expression froze. Immediately, she flew up and swiftly avoided Miao Yixiong's next attack. Yes, although the feeling is very weak, but I can confirm that this palm wind is mixed with the aura of the dark forces. Old Man Song's voice was obviously solemn. Dark forces? These 4 words made Yiqing Luo's eyes widen suddenly. Her gaze towards Miao Yixiong was also filled with astonishment. Hadn't the dark forces been taken away by the upper realm's peace messenger? How could there still be the aura of the dark forces left in Nirvana realm? Yiqing Luo frowned. This matter was getting more and more complicated. Forget it. Now was not the time to consider this. She had to snatch her man back first. After that, she would slowly investigate the reason why Miao Yixiong became stronger. Chi-Chi. Yiqing Luo pulled herself together and quickly retreated while shouting Chi-Chi's name. Chi-Chi bit off Miao Rongrong's arm. As a sacred beast which had not killed for thousands of years, it felt that it was too bloody. Moreover, Miao Rongrong's flesh was too smelly. It was filled with the stench of Gu worms. It really couldn't take a second bite. It heard Yiqing Luo's cry. It almost slithered out from Diamo Xian's body and dashed towards Yiqing Luo. Trap Miao Yixiong, I'll go to Xian first. Yiqing Luo quickly retreated behind Chi-Chi. Oh. Chi-Chi indicated that this was absolutely no problem. Chi-Chi let out a long howl and suddenly pounced towards Miao Yixiong. Luo. Miao Yixiong was gloating because he hit Yiqing Luo. But he saw Yiqing Luo suddenly change to a snow-white tiger. She wanted this tiger to entangle him? An ordinary magical beast dared to try and stop him? Overestimating herself. Miao Yixiong sneered, totally not putting Chi-Chi in his eyes. Profound energy gathered in his palms and directly hit Chi-Chi's tiger head. He was completely confident that this palm strike would definitely be able to smash the white tiger into meat paste. Bam bam bam. As the wind from the palms slammed down, the sound of the force stirring up everything in the surroundings was heard. A strong hurricane swept through the bedroom. A huge pit appeared on the ground. Rubble flew everywhere and the room began to shake. Miao Yixiong retracted his palms and quickly scanned his surroundings. That palm of his just now, he missed the white tiger. Roar, a majestic tiger roar came from behind. Miao Yixiong turned around. A claw directly scratched his face. Chi-Chi's sharp claws scratched the skin on Miao Yixiong's face, leaving bloody scratches. Miao Yixiong's face was a bloody mess. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she gave Chi-Chi a thumbs up. She then turned around and dashed towards Diamo Xian's direction. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. The overlord is mine. Miao Rongrong sensed Yiqing Luo's approach and she abruptly raised her head as her pair of sinister eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. That crazy and malevolent face, sinister, was extremely terrifying. Yiqing Luo met with Miao Rongrong's eyes, which were filled with madness and infatuation. She knew that this Miao Rongrong's mental state was not normal. Calculating the time in her heart, one joss stick's time was almost up. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered with Miao Rongrong. She directly lifted her leg and kicked Miao Rongrong to the corner. She immediately squatted down and was about to get close to Diamo Xian. Chapter 26:31. As soon as Miao Yixiong finished speaking, Yiqing Luo was keenly aware of the changes in the airflow. With her feet as the center, a horrifying airflow surrounded her body and attacked her. The air current that carried a murderous aura. This caused Yiqing Luo to stop in her tracks. Not good. Old Song floated around inside the azure dew bracelet. Girl Luo, Miao Yixiong wants to use a Gu formation to trap you. Gu formation? What the hell was that? Just the name alone was enough to tell that it wasn't anything good. A Gu formation is a formation that uses tens of thousands of Gu worms. It's a long-lost forbidden Gu technique. Old Man Song's voice trembled. How could Miao Yixiong use such a formation? Isn't he afraid of incurring the punishment of the heavenly Tao? This was a long-lost forbidden Gu technique. Once it was used, the commotion it caused might attract the attention of the peace messenger. This was a forbidden Gu technique that destroyed the balance of the Nirvana realm. If Miao Yixiong was taken away by the peace messenger, wouldn't the position of patriarch of the Miaogu aristocratic clan that he insisted on being, be for naught? To trap her. In order to control Diamo Xian, Miao Yixiong was even willing to take such a risk? Not allowing Yiqing Luo to think too much. The powerful streams of air around her feet gradually surrounded her. Then, countless poisonous insects of different shapes and sizes appeared in front of her. They followed the lingering airflow and wriggled towards her bit by bit. This array was extremely narrow. Yiqing Luo immediately turned around. It was very possible. Touching the lingering airflow, touching the disgusting liquid that kept dripping down, the viscous green liquid was dripping. In this quiet bedroom it was extremely strange. Last, don't move. These Gu worms have different uses. If they crawl into your body, you will be devoured by these Gu worms. Starting from your internal organs, you will become their puppet. Old Man Song's voice was slightly tense. He had never expected that he would actually encounter such a sinister formation in the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo absolutely could not move. Before a Gu worm comes into contact with a person's skin, its speed is very slow. They would follow the scent and slowly crawl to the human body. The minute Yiqing Luo was swallowed by these Gu worms. So many Gu worms, they would absolutely treat Yiqing Luo as food, completely swallowing her up. How do we break the formation? The fastest way. Yiqing Luo stood stiffly on the spot, her face filled with anxiety. Her eyes stared intently at Diamo Xian. The time it took for an incense stick to burn was almost up. No matter what, she had to leave this Gu formation. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Miao Rongrong, who had been kicked to the corner by her, dragging her entire body covered in blood, leaning on one hand as she continuously crawled towards Diamo Xian. From this angle, Yiqing Luo could clearly see there was a black thread floating in Miao Rongrong's eyes. That thin thread seemed to be a tool to control her. I don't know much about Gu. Old Man Song's heart was also burning with anxiety. He couldn't wait to rush out of the azure dew bracelet and suffer for Yiqing Luo. Unless the peace messenger rushes over. At this critical juncture, Yiqing Luo, who was trapped by the Gu worm. Not only did she have to watch Diamo Xian open his eyes and see Miao Rongrong, she also had to be devoured by the Gu worm in front of Diamo Xian. Miao Yixiong was simply too sinister, too vicious. Even if the peace messenger rushed over, Diamo Xian had already opened his eyes and the first person he saw would still be Miao Rongrong. Chapter 26:32. Time was running out. Looking at Miao Rongrong and Diamo Xian, they were still a few steps away. Even if Miao Rongrong crawled closer to Diamo Xian, and the moment Diamo Xian opened his eyes, he crawled to Diamo Xian's side. No. She absolutely would not allow Diamo Xian to develop any attachment towards other women. Even if it was because of the Gu poison. She absolutely could not tolerate it. Her man. No matter when, it could only belong to her alone. Last, don't be rash. Old Man Song realized what Yiqing Luo wanted to do and immediately called out to stop her. Yiqing Luo stared fixedly at the unconscious man lying on the ground. His gaze was so gentle that it seemed to carry the entire world. Her pink lips moved slightly and she said word by word, If I have to be separated from Xian and see him no longer love me, I'd rather die with him. What future? What search for his origins? Find out the secret of the Azure Dew bracelet? What? Wait a minute, when Xian no longer loved her, lost his consciousness and became a puppet. None of them counted for anything. Before she fell in love with Xian, she was indeed indifferent to love. But now, she had fallen in love with Xian. She wanted to stay by Xian's side forever. She had already determined that Xian was her man. If Xian forgot her because of the love worm and no longer loved her, she believed that if Xian was conscious, he would also make the same decision as her. She had said it from the beginning. Her love could not tolerate even a grain of sand. She loves Xian. They loved each other so much that they would rather die together than be so close to each other but unable to touch each other. You could call her selfish or heartless. At this moment, her eyes and heart were filled with Xian alone. The corners of her mouth curled up into a chilly smile. It was as if a beautiful poppy had bloomed on her face. She exuded a suffocating yet irresistible charm. She raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. A sparkling and translucent pearl appeared in her palm. Calming pearl? Lass, you really want to do this? Old Man Song really couldn't understand what Yiqing Luo was thinking about right now. Even though Venerable Sovereign had been poisoned by the love goo. But that didn't mean that it couldn't be solved. At least he was still alive, wasn't he? Why must she sacrifice her own life to become the first person that Xian saw? He even took out the tranquility bead. Yiqing Luo obviously wanted to borrow the power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade to forcefully break the formation. Yiqing Luo herself was very clear about it. Her body had long since lost control of her Profound Heart Jade several times. It could no longer withstand the protective power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. Forcefully expending the power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. There was an 80% chance Yiqing Luo would be completely swallowed by the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. However, no matter how Old Man Song persuaded Yiqing Luo, but he could only watch as Yiqing Luo's profound energy kept on rising. The Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade that had lost the suppression of the heart-settling pearl, when Yiqing Luo forcibly mobilized the power of the Profound Heart Jade. Bit by bit, something strange was happening. Yi Luo, what are you trying to do? Are you crazy? Miao Yixiong, who was being bitten by Chi, had also sensed Yiqing Luo's movement. He looked in disbelief at the increasingly thick profound energy in the goo formation. Yi Luo, that slut. Was she trying to forcefully break the formation? For a man, she didn't even want her own life. Chapter 2633. Your Majesty. Wait for me. Miao Rongrong spat out a sentence with a weak breath and sped up the squirming speed of her body. Just a little more. She was about to make the Overlord fall in love with her. He was doted on by the Dizun. She was still the high and mighty Lady Miao, the future Holy Virgin of the Miao tribe. She looked at the handsome man in front of her. Miao Rongrong trembled as she stretched out that one hand which was still intact, and grabbed onto Xian's robes. Bang! An irresistible burst of profound energy charged towards Miao Rongrong's outstretched hand. The dark force was like a sharp blade. Quickly and coldly, Miao Rongrong's hand was cut off. Get your filthy hands off my man. A cold and murderous voice drifted into the ears of the father and daughter of the Miao family bit by bit. Yiqing Luo's eyes were bloodshot. His eyes were sharp and his killing intent was obvious. He was in the middle of thousands of goo worms. The flames on her body forced those goo insects to not dare to come close to her. Miao Rongrong, quick. She couldn't get out. There's no way she can escape from the goo array. Miao Yixiong was so shocked by Yiqing Luo's look that he broke out in cold sweat. He only felt that the look in the girl's eyes. There was not the slightest bit of warmth. It was like looking at a dead person. Fear spread in his heart. He subconsciously urged Miao Rongrong. Xian was about to open his eyes. No matter what, Miao Rongrong was definitely in an advantageous position. It didn't matter even if he lost his hands. The venerable emperor who was poisoned by the love goo. Miao Rongrong was extremely ugly. Xian would love her as much as his own life. Miao Rongrong also knew this. Even if her mind was not clear, she knew that she must become Xian's woman. One hand was bitten off. One of his hands was cut off by Qi. She didn't seem to feel any pain. He could not feel the spread of blood. Using her own body, she arched towards the direction of Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned even redder. Bit by bit, an extremely cold killing intent and madness lingered on it. The mystic rank was still increasing. It was about to burst the goo worms that were surrounding him into a mountain. Luo girl. Wake up. You can't do this. Quickly put the heart-calming bead back into the profound heart jade. If this goes on, not only will you not be able to break the goo formation, your meridians might even be severed. Old Man Song's voice kept on dissuading Yiqing Luo in her mind. It was so anxious that it incessantly used the azure dew bracelet to burn Yiqing Luo's wrist. I'm fine. Before Xian opens his eyes, I won't let anything happen to me. Yiqing Luo's consciousness was still clear. Her eyes were filled with love as she gazed deeply at Diamo Xian's peerless and elegant face. His breathing gradually calmed down. Bang, there was a loud crash. The tightly shut door of the bedroom collapsed with a loud crash. Dust and gravel flew all over the ground. A clear voice rang from the door. Qing Luo, are you all right? Sorry I'm late. This voice had an instant of grooming. Yiqing Luo's mind was suddenly in a daze. His crimson eyes slowly moved to the door. However, she did not have time to see the person standing at the door. A gigantic goo worm fell from the sky and landed beside her. This goo worm was roughly the size of the woman's two palms put together. Compared to the thousands of different goo worms around, it was indeed considered to be gigantic. The goo worm was entirely black. Chapter 2634. The flames on Yiqing Luo's body at this moment inexplicably stopped. She lowered her eyes and looked at the gigantic goo worm by her feet. Intuition told her that this goo worm would not hurt her. Qing Luo, the king of venomous worms is here. You don't need to care about the other goo worms. Go to the overlord quickly. That clear voice rang once again, urging Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo noticed. The moment that gigantic goo worm landed by her feet, the surrounding wriggling goo worms all started to crawl upwards as though they were escaping. The green viscous liquid kept dripping as the densely packed goo worms crawled quickly. Yiqing Luo didn't think any further. She lifted her leg and charged towards Diamo Xian. Those goo worms which were originally trapped around her. When they sensed her approaching, they started to move away. The densely packed goo worms, all sorts of colors and shapes, were separated into two sides. This was really a visual impact. But Yiqing Luo didn't have the mood to bother about this visual impact. All her thoughts were placed on Diamo Xian. So much so that when Miao Yixiong saw Yiqing Luo rushing out of the array and saw the person standing at the door, his face was filled with rage and he bellowed. Yiqing Luo didn't even bother about it. Miao Yi, you vile spawn. You stole the Miao family's ancient goo worm and now you dare to help an outsider to deal with your biological father. Miao Yixiong was so angry that his intestines were churning. He couldn't believe it. When the plan was about to succeed, it was ruined by Miao Yi, the vile spawn whom he had never cared about. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo rushed to Diamo Xian's side and held his hand. The man's fingers were icy cold like ice. Her heart ached as she wrapped her hands around his hand. A pair of charming eyes stared intently at Diamo Xian's face. Very quickly, Diamo Xian's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up as she delightedly leaned forward. Mine? Mine. The overlord is mine. A hoarse roar came from Miao Rongrong's mouth. When he saw Yiqing Luo's expression change, Miao Rongrong knew. Diamo Xian must be waking up. The overlord could only be hers. She was the overlord's most beloved woman. It couldn't be anyone else. It couldn't be anyone else. Miao Rongrong mustered up all her strength and not knowing where she got the energy from, she actually propped up her own body which was covered in blood as she fiercely charged towards Yiqing Luo who was lying beside Diamo Xian. Diamo Xian's eyes moved again. At the same time, Miao Rongrong's head knocked heavily onto Yiqing Luo's waist. Yiqing Luo was half kneeling by Diamo Xian's side with her back straight and didn't notice Miao Rongrong's madness. The impact caused her body to sway slightly. Her entire body fell towards the other side of Diamo Xian. Seizing this opportunity, Miao Rongrong swiftly moved her face close to Diamo Xian. But, just as Yiqing Luo's body was about to fall onto the ground beside Diamo Xian, his waist suddenly tightened. The man's broad palm held her waist tightly. Yiqing Luo's body fell onto the man's chest. He felt a warm sensation on his lips. She was stunned and then she realized, this fall of his was especially melodramatic. He kissed Diamo Xian's lips. What was that force on his waist just now? That familiar temperature, that familiar force. But, wasn't Xian unconscious? He who was poisoned by the love goo, how could he make such an action? Just as Yi Qing Luo's thoughts were in a mess. Chapter 2635. His eyes were as deep as the sea. He stared at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Loving and gentle, affectionate and gentle. Even Yi Qing Luo, when she met that pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, she lost her soul for a moment. This man was really evildoer. Perfectly grown with peerless elegance. His imposing manner was so seductive. Wait a minute, Yi Qing Luo suddenly thought of something as she pulled her thoughts away from the beauty. Her hands supported his chest as she sat up straight, her eyes staring at his face in a daze. Xian. You didn't? This Xian. No matter if it was his gaze or expression, it was no different from usual. And earlier when she fell from his body, it was Xian who pulled her back into his arms. If it wasn't for Xian's large palm, supporting her waist, probably the person Xian saw when he opened his eyes would be Miao Rongrong. But if Xian wasn't affected by the love worm, even if the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was Miao Rongrong, then it didn't matter anymore. The man looked at her, his gaze was still that gentle, that perfect face which made one suffocated, outlined a warm smile. His large palm was still that possessive, hugging her waist tightly. A strong and overbearing aura. An irresistible charm. It was still so familiar. Yi Qing Luo heaved a sigh of relief, as a comfortable smile surfaced on her face, radiant and beautiful. Miao Rongrong, who was lying on the side, was still a step too late as she fell stiffly to the side. All her energy was used earlier when she bumped into Yi Qing Luo. At this moment, Miao Rongrong didn't even have the energy to stand up. She was the closest. Naturally, after Xian opened his eyes, the atmosphere between the two of them was all taken in. Her eyes widened in astonishment. What? The love worm didn't work? How could the overlord not be affected by the love worm? Wasn't his consciousness swallowed by the love worm, and only listened to the first person he saw? But Xian was obviously no different from before. Could it be that the overlord was already so powerful that he could even decode their Miao Gu family's taboo? Miao Yixiong also noticed this, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. Unable to believe that even after he had infiltrated his ancestor's tomb and dug out the forbidden love goo from his ancestor, he still had no way to control Xian. How powerful was the Zun? No. Impossible. How could it be useless? Miao Rongrong was already mentally unstable. At this moment, she was stimulated by the two of them looking at each other affectionately. She immediately exploded and shook her head desperately. He was also poisoned by my heart separation goo. How could he cure it? No, he won't love that bitchy Luo anymore, he won't. Centrifugal goo? Miao Yixiong heard these three words and looked at Miao Rongrong with his bloodied face. You used the centrifugal goo on Lord Zun? He couldn't possibly still love Yi Luo? He wouldn't? He should have killed Yi Luo? He should have killed Yi Luo. Miao Rongrong kept repeating this sentence as if she was possessed. Obviously he was greatly agitated. Miao Yixiong didn't need Miao Rongrong's answer. Miao Rongrong's current appearance represented her answer. Chapter 2636. Centrifugal goo? When Miao Yi heard the name of this goo poison, her delicate face immediately paled. You two are simply infuriating. As the Miao tribe leader, as the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe, you actually disobeyed the advice of your ancestors and used this kind of forbidden goo art. Evil girl, shut up. Miao Yixiong ruthlessly glared at Miao Yi. You vile spawn, if not for you, how could my Miao Gu clan have fallen to such a state? Miao Yi's face paled. Her slender fingers clenched one by one. Her lips trembled with anger. She should have lost all hope for this so-called father a long time ago. She had long since given up hoping that this so-called father would have even the slightest bit of affection for her. In the eyes of Miao Yixiong and everyone in the Miao tribe, Miao Yi was an ominous person. But who knew? She was the direct descendant of the Miao tribe leader. She was the one who was truly suitable to be the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. The honor that Miao Rongrong received in the Miao tribe, it should have belonged to her. But, because of her extravagant desire for fatherly love, an extravagant desire for kinship, he was willing to give everything to Miao Rongrong. All she wanted was a little bit of love from Miao Yixiong. However, her compromise, her hope, in the end, it became the weapon that killed his mother. Her mother had died at the hands of Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong because of her extravagant hopes of kinship. From that moment on, Miao Yi finally understood. No matter what she did, how she did it, those who did not love her would not love her in the end. Miao Yixiong would never treat her as his daughter. Even if, give up everything. Her mother had sacrificed her life for her stupidity. A clear and melodious voice interrupted Miao Yi's thoughts. Her slightly reddened eyes blinked. A crystal-clear tear rolled down from the corner of his eye. She raised her head and forced her tears back. Following that, she turned her head back and looked at that young lady whom she was willing to rely on. Qing Luo, the overlord. Is he all right? Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian had both stood up. The young girl's petite body nestled in the man's arms. The man's large palm did not move away from the girl's waist in the slightest. He maintained a sidelong glance. His shimmering peach blossom eyes stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Yi Qing Luo's body was slightly messy. Her beautiful face had also turned a little pale. Earlier, when Yi Qing Luo forcibly activated the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade's energy, although it was stopped due to Miao Yi's arrival, but it still caused huge damage to Yi Qing Luo's body. He's fine. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly as she replied calmly. However, out of the corner of her eye, she subconsciously glanced at the hand on her waist. Her small hand pressed down on the back of the hand that was on her waist. The man lowered his eyes and smiled even more gently. It was as if he wanted to drown her in the warm spring water. Yi Qing Luo's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. She looked away and forced herself to calm down. She looked at Miao Rongrong, who had fallen to the side. What's the matter with the poisonous centrifugal spell? The effect of the poisonous centrifugal spell is the opposite of the love centrifugal spell. The love centrifugal spell makes the host develop a sense of attachment towards the first person they meet. The poisonous centrifugal spell makes the host forget the person whom the poisonous centrifugal spell had specified, and to that person develop killing intent. Miao Yi explained and immediately looked at Dmo Xian. The overlord is a legend like the Nirvana realm god. He doesn't seem to be affected by the poisonous centrifugal spell, so you don't have to worry. She didn't notice. After she finished explaining about the poisonous centrifugal spell. Chapter 2637. Let's leave this place first. The barrier is about to break, and the people from the Qinghua sect will be able to sense what's happening here, said Miao Yi. Before I leave, I have to give this father and daughter a big gift. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned cold as she subconsciously increased the strength of the hand that was pressing on the back of Dmo Xian's hand. She spoke as she spoke. His tone was filled with killing intent. A pair of long and narrow eyes glowed with a cold light. Miao Yi was shocked by Yi Qing Luo's reaction. She was slightly stunned, but very quickly she understood the reason why Yi Qing Luo was so angry. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong wanted to use the love goo to force Lord Dizun to fall in love with Miao Rongrong. He even poisoned Lord Dizun with the centrifugal goo that would make Lord Dizun lose his mind. This was totally stepping on Qing Luo's bottom line. Qing Luo. The Miao tribe in the northern continent has a pivotal position. If the Miao tribe's chief and eldest young miss were to die in the Qinghua sect, it would cause a war between the Miao tribe and the Qinghua sect. Miao Yi reminded as she looked at the murderous young lady. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled up in an evil manner. Don't worry, I won't take their lives after all. The one who hates them more is you. Miao Yi was stunned. Her lips moved. When did you find out? After returning from the Bu family village, I roughly guessed it. Yi Qing Luo didn't keep him guessing. Plus, Xian Gui's attitude towards you has confirmed my guess. Xian Gui was clearly a member of the Miao Gu aristocrat clan. However, Xian Gui's status was not high. It was also because of this that he was humiliated by Miao Rongrong in the Peach Blossom restaurant. Miao Yi lowered her eyes, a layer of guilt appearing on her pretty face. Sorry, I knew you needed Gu masters, but I hid it from you. Everyone has secrets that they don't want others to know. It's okay. Yi Qing Luo's voice was very indifferent. Miao Rongrong is already crippled. Comparing your venomous insect skills with hers, who's better? Miao Yi knew the meaning behind her question. Miao Yi looked at Yi Qing Luo and nodded her head vigorously. I'm stronger than her. Then if you become the Miao tribe leader and sacred maiden, will that make the Miao tribe become better? Yi Qing Luo nodded her head in satisfaction, as her pair of charming eyes were tainted with a sliver of radiance. Miao Yi had apparently not expected Yi Qing Luo to use such a normal tone to say such shocking words, but when he heard Yi Qing Luo's last word, Miao Yi's beautiful eyes were gradually filled with a resolute light. Yes, I will do better than them. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she patted her shoulder lightly. Following that, he held Diamo Xian's hand as they walked towards Miao Yixiong. That's right, that Gu King of yours, can I borrow it for a while? Yi Qing Luo pointed at the ancient Gu worm which was still in the Gu array, forcing those Gu worms to jump up and down. Miao Yi looked at the Gu King hesitantly. It's not easy to control. I'm afraid it will hurt you. It has already recognized you as its master. It will understand your feelings. When Yi Qing Luo finished her sentence, she suddenly had a feeling, as if the venomous Worm King was looking in her direction. He deserved to be the ancient Gu King. He could also understand human language. In this case, it would be more convenient to borrow the Gu King's power. You and Xian Gui leave first. I will leave this place before the enchantment disappears. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a bloodthirsty smile. Chapter 2638. Miao Yi bent down and touched the hard carapace on the venomous Worm King's body and whispered, I'll pick you up later. She turned around and left the bedroom. Yi Qing Luo's gaze fell onto Miao Yixiong. She didn't notice. That Qi which had been pestering Miao Yixiong had unknowingly returned to the size of a cat. Its tail was wagging furiously. Its tiger eyes lit up as it wagged its tail and followed behind Miao Yi. Outside the door, a young man's panicked voice could be heard. Where did this cat come from? Don't pounce on me. The door to the bedroom was once again tightly shut. The light in the bedroom dimmed a little. Miao Yixiong's back was pressed against the wall, all his muscles tensed up. Yi Luo, this is Qingyue sect. Just like what Miao Yi said. This was Qingyue sect. His Miao tribe leader had met with an accident in Qingyue sect. Qingyue sect had to bear all the responsibility. Didn't Yi Luo have an affair with Qingyue sect? She would definitely not let Qingyue sect fall into such a predicament. Hee, a clear and melodious laughter rang out. But the coldness in it made Miao Yixiong's heart skip a beat. Why are you so nervous, Miao Yixiong? I said. I won't kill you. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly. The coldness between her brows was obvious. Even that pair of blood-red eyes seemed to be covered with a black fog like thick ink. She was smiling. However, the formless pressure in the air seemed to have condensed the surrounding air. Miao Yixiong was horrified. His face was badly mutilated by Qi-Qi's claws, twitching and turning over the flesh. The blood mixed with the dust on the ground was extremely disgusting. However, this disgusting scene didn't change the young lady's expression. She just looked at him with a faint smile. There was no warmth in her gaze. This is a private matter between you, Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong and me. How would I involve Qingyue sect? Her sweet voice sounded like a summon from hell. At this moment Miao Yixiong felt. The current Yi Luo looked even more intimidating than Diamo Xian beside her. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo looked sideways at Diamo Xian. As soon as she looked up, she met the man's gentle gaze. Her expression was soft. She gently pressed the hands around her waist. You stand here and wait for me. The hand on her waist tightened its grip. The man shook his head and stared at her. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she threw her petite body into Diamo Xian's arms. The man's arms immediately wrapped around her body. Yi Qing Luo raised her arms and circled them around Diamo Xian's neck. She tiptoed slightly and kissed him on his thin lips. As if he was coaxing a child, he used a voice that only the two of them could hear and said gently, Ah Xian, listen to me. You stay here and watch me. I won't leave. The hand on her waist tightened. He seemed to be a little unhappy. But because Yi Qing Luo's kiss on his lips was soft and fragrant. In the end he released his hands and stood aside. I'll wait for you. Yi Qing Luo revealed a smile as her eyes were filled with warmth. This scene fell into Miao Yixiong's eyes and he felt that something wasn't right. Love worm. Really had no effect on Diamo Xian? But why did he feel that? Diamo Xian's imposing manner wasn't as terrifying as before he fainted? Not right. If Diamo Xian was really affected by the love worm, then he would definitely be affected by Miao Rongrong, who had implanted the centrifugal worm into Diamo Xian. Looking at the atmosphere between Diamo Xian and Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 2639. The Ancestors' Forbidden Technique. It had no effect on Diamo Xian, Miao Yixiong's eyes changed as it shone with an unknown glint. He looked at the young lady who was walking towards him step by step, and looked at Diamo Xian who was standing by the side. His gaze was fixed on the young lady. He took a deep breath. Diamo Xian had no intention to make a move. To him this was a chance to live. As long as he could restrain Yi Luo, he would have the chance to leave this place. Leader Miao, since you like goo worms so much, why not let these goo worms accompany you to play? Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly, but her voice was indifferent while her gaze was icy cold. Miao Yixiong was still puzzled about the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. He saw Yiqing Luo lowered her head and took a look at that huge goo worm. Goo King, I'll have to trouble you. The eerie green light on the carapace of the goo worm that was about the size of 2 palms flickered. In the goo array, those goo worms which were escaping immediately stopped. Following that, they swarmed towards Miao Yixiong's direction. The speed of the goo worms was very slow. Tens of thousands of them formed a black hurricane as it charged towards Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong stared at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. His reaction was swift as he tried to control these goo worms. But at the next moment, those goo worms completely swallowed him up. Miao Yixiong's entire body was covered with scratches from Qi. Many parts of his body were badly mutilated and his white bones could be seen. This made it easier for these goo worms to burrow into Miao Yixiong's body. Miao Yixiong didn't even have the energy to resist. He was drowned by thousands of goo worms. Miao Yixiong's body was covered by a dense assortment of goo worms. The scene was extremely disgusting and horrifying. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly, but there wasn't a single ripple in her eyes. Her lips curled up slightly as she gave an evil smile. Leader Miao, don't struggle and don't cry out. I said I won't take your life and I will absolutely not let you die. Her voice was light and ethereal, making one feel an inexplicable chill. Miao Rongrong, who was sprawled on the ground, was so shocked that she wanted to escape. But she couldn't control that broken body at all. Bam! Before he could stand up, he fell heavily to the ground. The noise created by Miao Rongrong also made Yiqing Luo shift her gaze onto her. Miao Rongrong shuddered, her crazed eyes were filled with fear towards Yiqing Luo. This was a fear that came from the bottom of his heart. He did not hide it at all. Don't be anxious, it's your turn now. Yiqing Luo smiled as she took slow steps towards Miao Rongrong. Looking at Miao Rongrong's ferocious and frightened expression, she laughed again. Scared? Why weren't you afraid when you poisoned Xian? I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Forgive me, please forgive me. Forgive me. Miao Rongrong was so scared that she no longer had the slightest bit of infatuation towards Diamo Xian. Miao Rongrong's only thought now was to survive. Although Yiqing Luo had said that she would spare her and Miao Yixiong's lives. But looking at Miao Yixiong, who was covered by so many goo worms, he could not help but sigh. She was a goo master, how could she not understand? How could Miao Yixiong, who had been swallowed by a parasite, still be alive? Even if he was alive, that was just a parasite's puppet. It's not impossible to let you go after all. You who have lost both your hands can't affect me at all. Yiqing Luo bent down slightly as she looked at Miao Rongrong with a smile. Tell me the cure for the love parasite and centrifugal parasite. Chapter 2640. You don't know? Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously. Miao Rongrong trembled in fear and shook her head desperately. I really don't know. That's the ancestors' forbidden spell. Ordinary goo masters like us have no way of knowing the solution to forbidden goo arts. I only took the heart separation goo when father wasn't paying attention. But I really don't know how to cure the poison. She cried and kept moving backwards. Dragging the blood all over the ground, Zhang Xian looked extremely filthy. There was not a single trace of the domineering aura he had before. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she fixed her gaze on Miao Rongrong for some time. He could more or less confirm that Miao Rongrong did not know the solution to the love goo and centrifugal goo. Her gaze landed on Miao Yixiong, who was struggling under the cover of the goo worms. Lass, I'm afraid. Miao Yixiong doesn't know how to cure the forbidden goo. Ever since the ancestors of the Miao tribe sealed the black tortoise, the ancestors of the Miao tribe brought all the forbidden goo techniques into the tomb. Old Man Song's voice resounded in his mind. My guess is that Miao Yixiong went directly to the Miao tribe's tomb and took away the love goo and the separation goo from the Miao tribe's ancestor's coffin. As for the cure, unless the Miao tribe's ancestor revives, it's impossible that the Miao ancestors didn't leave behind the cure. Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened. Since there's no way to dig it out from this father and daughter pair, I'll search the entire Miao tribe. These two types of goo poison were obviously of the opposite attribute. No matter how strong Diamo Xian was, no matter how strong his body was, it was invaded by these two goo at the same time. To some extent it would still affect his body. She must think of a way to remove the two types of venom in Diamo Xian's body. Yiqing Luo was deep in thought as she conversed with Old Man Song. Suddenly, he sensed a sharp gust of wind coming at him. Yiqing Luo swiftly retreated and flipped her palm. Profound qi burst forth and turned into a sharp blade. Ah! A blood-curdling scream was heard, followed by the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Miao Rongrong's body rolled several times on the ground. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Miao Rongrong bumped into the corner of the wall and coughed non-stop. Her face was covered in blood, and her expression could no longer be seen clearly. He could only vaguely see her twisted and hideous facial features. "If you don't let me go, I'll kill you." She howled hoarsely as her pair of malevolent eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. As though she knew that no matter what, Yiqing Luo would not let her off, so she might as well go all out. However, Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. "Just based on your current look and you want to kill me?" Miao Rongrong had lost both her hands. Even his most proficient goo technique could not be used on her. Miao Rongrong still wanted to kill her? "I can even perish together with you. Perish together with you." Miao Rongrong at this moment seemed to have returned back to her previous state, when she was infatuated with Diamo Xian, and her abnormal mental state. Her lips moved quickly. He muttered the words "perish together." He looked like he was possessed. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Miao Rongrong, who was trying her best to shift her back, leaning against the wall, smiling sinisterly in an attempt to stand up, but repeatedly falling onto the ground. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes immediately dimmed as her slender brows knitted tightly, as she stared straight into Miao Rongrong's bewitched eyes. Her pupils shook and her feet changed as she speedily moved towards Miao Rongrong's direction. Miao Rongrong was just preparing to operate her profound jade heart, attempting to use it to self-destruct, exploding the entire bedroom. Chapter 2641. Miao Rongrong wanted to avoid it, but Yiqing Luo's hand had already grabbed her long hair, which was soaked in blood. Hiss! Miao Rongrong gasped in pain. Her pupils became clearer because of this burst of pain. "Oh, I didn't expect there to be a new discovery." Yiqing Luo sneered as she pulled Miao Rongrong's head towards her. She had no intention of showing mercy to the fairer sex. "Let me go." Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that her scalp was about to be pulled off. Yiqing Luo ignored Miao Rongrong's scream. She pulled her head closer to herself. His eyes were fixed on Miao Rongrong's pupils without blinking. The more Miao Rongrong struggled, the tighter her scalp was pulled. In the end, Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that she had no energy to struggle. About the time it took to burn half an incense stick. Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand and quickly poked Miao Rongrong's eyes. Miao Rongrong screamed in shock and quickly closed her eyes. The intense pain that he had imagined did not come. Miao Rongrong's heart was so scared that it almost jumped out from her throat. The young lady's icy cold voice rang in her ears, "Open your eyes." Miao Rongrong's eyelashes fluttered and instinctively opened her eyes under Yiqing Luo's coercion. In front of her was the young lady's slender fair fingers. It was sparkling and translucent like jade, and glowing with a moist luster. At this moment, Miao Rongrong's consciousness was unprecedentedly clear. She quickly tried to move backward to avoid the attack. But her hair was tightly held in Yiqing Luo's hand. She wanted to escape. The pulling of her scalp brought about a sharp pain. Miao Rongrong's breathing became hurried as fear magnified in her heart. His pupils also unconsciously widened a little. Suddenly Miao Rongrong felt a stinging pain in her eyes. But Yiqing Luo's fingers did not touch her eyes at all, not allowing Miao Rongrong to think carefully. The pain in her eyes became more and more obvious. It was as though something was swelling in her eyes, as if something was about to explode. "Move again and I will dig out your eyes." A cold voice floated down from above. Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that she was trembling and sweating profusely. "What are you going to do?" Yiqing Luo didn't answer her. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Her fingers were just a little distance away from Miao Rongrong's opened eyes. If her hand trembled for even a moment, it would definitely stab Miao Rongrong in the eye. Very quickly Yiqing Luo's fingertip, which was placed on Miao Rongrong's eyes, appeared a black line. It was extremely thin. It was like a strand of hair. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to tell. That black thread, after being pinched by Yiqing Luo's fingertips, seemed to have a life of its own as it tried to escape. But Yiqing Luo grabbed it tightly. Back when Miao Rongrong was obsessed with Diamo Xian, Yiqing Luo discovered a faintly discernible black line in Miao Rongrong's eyes. This was the thing that controlled Miao Rongrong. It was the thing that caused Miao Rongrong to repeatedly lose control and become crazy. Yiqing Luo recalled that Miao Yixiong's palm strike on her earlier, which revealed the dark force's presence. This black thread. It was similar to the mysterious Yin energy. But this black thread was obviously much more brilliant than the mysterious Yin energy. At least, she could immediately discover the mysterious Yin energy and expel it. And this black thread, if it wasn't for her sharp observation, she wouldn't be able to detect it at all. After grabbing that black thread. Chapter 2642. Yiqing Luo pulled on it. Miao Rongrong's body started to tremble. It was so painful that she couldn't help but draw in a breath of cold air. But the fear towards Yiqing Luo made her not dare to struggle. After a while, that slender black thread was completely pulled out from Miao Rongrong's eyes. Yiqing Luo gestured. It was about half the length of her arm. When the black thread was completely pulled out, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo also confirmed that this black thread really had its own consciousness. Because the moment Yiqing Luo just pulled out the black thread, that slender black thread swiftly wrapped around Yiqing Luo's wrist. Immediately, it headed towards Yiqing Luo's eyes. But before the black thread entered Yiqing Luo's eyes, it was pressed down by Yiqing Luo's fingernails. TSK. Yiqing Luo let go of Miao Rongrong's hair and with a casual flick, her fingers swiftly wrapped the black thread around her hand. Miao Rongrong fell onto the ground and raised her head. From this angle, she could see clearly the black thread in Yiqing Luo's hand. She recalled what Yiqing Luo did to her eyes earlier and her body stiffened as she asked in a trembling voice, "This? What is this thing?" Becoming someone else's puppet and you still don't know, to think you're the eldest miss of the Miao tribe. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly as she shot a disdainful glance at her. Miao Rongrong's face turned pale as she leaned against the wall weakly, gasping for air. "This thing, who put it on you? Is Miao Yixiong also controlled by this thing?" As Yiqing Luo was asking, she pretended to use her little finger to smear a layer of something on that black thin thread. Miao Rongrong shrunk back as she lowered her head. "I don't know." "You don't know again?" Yiqing Luo laughed. "If I ask you, you don't know anything, what's the use of keeping you alive?" Miao Rongrong immediately raised her head as she looked at Yiqing Luo in fear. "This thing, I really don't know. My father, he will not be controlled." "You're so certain that your father isn't being controlled, yet you say you don't know the source of this thing?" Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Miao Rongrong realized that her answer had fallen into Yiqing Luo's trap as she clenched her teeth. "I really don't know that person. I've never seen his face before. I can only confirm that he's a man and his age isn't old." "Man, young age?" Yiqing Luo murmured these two clues as she lowered her eyes to look at the struggling black thread. A dim light flashed across his eyes. "The barrier is about to be broken. The people from the Great Joy sect should be here soon." Yiqing Luo glanced at the tightly shut door. "Today it's just a small punishment, another day, we'll continue." The smile on her lips deepened. He gently caressed the profound phoenix ring. Then he sprinkled a handful of powder on Miao Rongrong. The next instant, Yiqing Luo had already moved to the door of the room. Perhaps it was because the speed was too fast. Yiqing Luo's hand, which was pinching the black thread, knocked against the door. She felt pain as soon as she ate. The black thread was like a soft snake as it squeezed into the gap of the door and disappeared. Yiqing Luo wasn't flustered at all as she revealed an unfathomable smile. Following that, she opened the door and walked out. "King of venomous worms, let's go," she called out softly. The gigantic worm, which was originally standing in the array, leaped up and landed on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. If it was an ordinary lady, with such a huge worm crawling on her body, she would definitely scream uncontrollably. But Yiqing Luo expressed that she even dared to use her bare hands to catch venomous snakes and scorpions. Chapter 2643. Miao Rongrong's heart thumped when she saw Yiqing Luo leaving so readily. She didn't believe that Yiqing Luo would be so kind to let her off. Soon Miao Rongrong's guess was confirmed. At the moment when Yiqing Luo closed the bedroom door, Miao Yixiong, who was covered by goo worms, suddenly let out a roar like a wild beast. Miao Rongrong looked over in shock. She saw. Miao Yixiong stood up shakily. His body was crawling with goo worms. Because the Goo King was no longer controlling him. Those goo worms were disorderly as they scurried around. Miao Yixiong's body was full of flesh and blood, goo worms were crawling around, it was extremely disgusting and horrifying. The impact of this scene made Miao Rongrong's pupils dilate rapidly. An uncontrollable scream of fear came from her throat. Miao Rongrong tilted her head and vomited uncontrollably. She heard this scream. Miao Yixiong slowly turned his head, his cold eyes stared at Miao Rongrong without blinking. Goo worms crawled all over his body, which was covered in flesh and blood, as he staggered towards Miao Rongrong's direction. Don't come over. Miao Rongrong said in a hoarse and trembling voice. Her body kept moving towards the corner of the wall. The moment she moved, Miao Rongrong discovered the strangeness of her body. Her whole body was so weak that she couldn't even lift a finger. Following that, an indescribable burning sensation surged from the soles of her feet. Just for a moment, Miao Rongrong felt like there were countless ants gnawing on her body. Her whole body felt extremely itchy. It itched so much that she twisted her body unconsciously. It itched so much that she wanted to rub against something unconsciously. It was like an itch from the bones. Her lower abdomen was burning with a ball of fire. Her whole body was itching unbearably. No matter how stupid Miao Rongrong was, she knew. Her body was not normal. She thought of the thin layer of powder that Yiqing Luo sprinkled on her before she left. Then she saw Miao Yixiong staggering toward her like a wild beast. Miao Rongrong shuddered and suddenly realized. Yiqing Luo's plan. No. Absolutely not. That mysterious man. Why didn't he come to save her? Why didn't he come? No matter how much Miao Rongrong resisted in her mind. In the end, Miao Yixiong walked to her side. No matter how conscious Miao Rongrong was, hoping that the mysterious man would come in time. But the moment Miao Yixiong's hand touched her, the restlessness in her body drove her to take the initiative to approach him. Miao Yixiong's horrifying and disgusting body. Two bodies that reeked of blood touched each other. The goo worms crawled on the two people's bodies. The barrier around the Miao tribe's courtyard was completely broken. And because of Yiqing Luo's intentional actions, they had already sensed the strange profound qi fluctuations over here. Yin Yanxiu and the other forces in the Qinghua sect rushed over. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he could clearly hear the panting of a woman. It was accompanied by the sound of heavy breathing. Although there were more than 20 people in the group, none of them were young men or women. But hearing such a voice in front of so many people, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. One of the middle-aged men coughed a few times and said awkwardly, "I didn't expect Miss Miao to be such a woman who doesn't care about trifles. We must have misunderstood something. Let's leave first." The others nodded in agreement. Miao Rongrong was still unmarried. Chapter 2644. However, many people's gazes still landed on the room where the battle was intense. In their minds, Miao Rongrong's beautiful face appeared. Everyone couldn't help but have some kind of thought. But in front of Yin Yanxiu, they naturally couldn't show their dirty thoughts. All of them winked and were about to turn around and leave. What's going on? Rongrong wouldn't do such a thing unless that person is. Suddenly, a cry of disbelief was heard. Everyone turned to look. The man who was staring at the bedroom with his eyes wide open in shock was none other than Miao Jingwei. Miao Jingwei was trembling all over. He wasn't afraid but excited. But on his face he still maintained his shocked expression. A woman's voice came from the bedroom. It was extremely familiar. The person in the room was definitely the overlord. Just now, the dark force fluctuation from this courtyard was deliberately attracted by Miao Rongrong, right? It was to tell everyone. She, Miao Rongrong, was the overlord's real woman. It seemed that the plan was a success. He had to cooperate with Miao Rongrong's plan. When everyone knew that the person the overlord doted on from now on was Miao Rongrong, their Miaogu family status would definitely soar. They might even surpass the Qinghua clan. "Second young Master Miao, who are you talking about?" Someone asked curiously when he saw Miao Jingwei hesitating. Many people shifted their gazes over at the same time. Miao Jingwei looked at them and shook his head awkwardly. I'm not sure. That person is not someone I can casually talk about. The more Miao Jingwei said so, the more curious the crowd was. To be able to make the arrogant Miss Miao, in the territory of the Qingyue clan, who was bedridden with a cold, dare to make such a big scene. Who was that man? Miao Jingwei evaded and said in a low voice, "We'd better leave first. If Miss Yi knows about the situation here, she'll turn the Qingyue clan upside down." It would have been better if he didn't mention the name Miss Yi. Once it was mentioned, the surrounding people immediately burst into an uproar. Miss Yi? That meant, the man inside was the overlord. She recalled that a few days ago, Miao Rongrong had tried to please Di Zun several times, but Di Zun and Yi Luo had rejected her mercilessly. Now, the overlord actually slept with Miao Rongrong behind Yi Luo's back? This was too shocking. Are you saying that the person inside is the overlord? Yin Yanxiu had been paying attention to the bedroom and frowned. The relationship between Di Zun and Yi Luo. He saw it very clearly. How could the overlord be with a woman like Miao Rongrong behind Yi Luo's back? I didn't say anything. Miao Jingwei raised his head abruptly as if he had spilled the beans. His panicked attempt to explain further confirmed what the overlord had said in the bedroom. The way everyone looked at Miao Jingwei and the person in the bedroom immediately changed. The teasing, filthy, and obscene gazes all disappeared at this moment. Yin Yanxiu's frown deepened. Could the person inside be His Majesty? As he spoke, he walked towards the bedroom. Chapter 2645. Miao Jingwei's words further confirmed that the person inside was Dmo Xian. The overlord and eldest young Miss Miao had this layer of relationship, which also meant that from now onwards the Miao tribe would have the protection of the overlord. Who would dare to offend the Miaogu family? Immediately, everyone rushed forward to stop Yin Yanxiu. Young sect master Yin, second young master Miao is right, we must not disturb them at such a time. If we spoil the mood of the person inside, we will not be able to bear the consequences. Yin Yanxiu's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. His gentle eyes were also covered with a layer of ice. His pupils were as dark as ink, extremely gloomy. Second young master Miao is so sure that the person inside is the overlord. Why do I feel that you are intentionally leading us to think that the person inside is the overlord? After all, none of us can really inquire about the relationship between the overlord and eldest young Miss Miao, isn't it? When the last three words were spat out, under Yin Yanxiu's invisible pressure, Miao Jingwei actually felt his legs turning into jelly. His breathing was a little messy. I did not intentionally lead you. The person inside is the overlord. The overlord had long fallen in love with Rongrong at first sight, otherwise, Rongrong would not possibly stick her warm face to a cold but in front of so many people. After saying a few words, Miao Jingwei became more and more confident. Even the overlord would not be able to escape the control of the ancestors' forbidden technique. The person inside was undoubtedly the overlord. Yin Yanxiu did not believe that the overlord would do such a thing. But Miao Jingwei's confident tone, he did not know how to refute. And Miao Jingwei's certainty and confidence made all the powerhouses believe that Dmo Xian and Miao Rongrong had a close relationship. Everyone's smiles towards Miao Jingwei became even more gentle and amiable. A few of them tugged at Yin Yanxiu and advised him softly, "Young sect master, no matter who is inside, we should not disturb them. Let's leave this place first. If the person inside really finds out and spoils the mood, we are all men, we definitely know how it feels, it's not a good feeling." Miao Jingwei's mind rippled when he saw everyone's respectful and fawning actions. He became increasingly pleased with himself. These people were so respectful to Di Zun after hearing that Di Zun had such a relationship with their Miao Miao's young Mississippi. In the future, when they saw the overlord listening to their Miao clan's young mistress, wouldn't he have to worship them like gods? Young sect master Yin, I know you have a good relationship with Miss Yi, but isn't it normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Only our young mistress of the Miao tribe is worthy of such an outstanding man like Di Zun. Miao Jingwei smiled proudly. Young sect master Yin, your emotions are so unstable. You'd better leave first. Don't disturb the overlord's mood. After all, the overlord is still in Rongrong's bedroom. He won't be coming out anytime soon, he drawled. Everyone nodded in agreement. He pulled Yin Yanxiu even harder, afraid that he would disturb the overlord. However, just as the crowd was pushing and yelling, clamoring to leave, A clear and pleasant voice with a hint of laughter rang out leisurely, "Are you talking about Xian?" Chapter 2646. Everyone felt a chill down their spines as their bodies stiffened. This voice. Wasn't it Yi Luo's voice? Why was Yi Luo here? Could it be that he was here to catch a girl? Thinking of Yi Luo's valiance, everyone's body trembled. No way. She absolutely could not let Yi Luo know that the Overlord had already gotten together with Miao Rongrong behind her back. Everyone racked their brains trying to think of a way to deceive this matter. But in the bedroom, that burst of sound, it really made one unable not to pay attention to the commotion over there. "All of your backs are facing me, don't tell me you're feeling guilty?" Yiqing Luo's voice got nearer. It was clear and melodious, like a silver bell, extremely pleasing to the ear. But unfortunately it made everyone's hearts surge with a chill. "What do you think what happened to Xian?" That voice continued. The crowd trembled even more violently. Strange. They were obviously very clear. The current Yi Luo was already the Overlord's old love. It was uncertain whether the Overlord still wanted Yi Luo. By right there was no need for them to fear Yi Luo. But they still couldn't control themselves. Under Yi Luo's imposing manner, Miao Jingwei was feeling complacent when he heard Yi Luo's clear voice. He recalled the humiliation he had suffered in Yi Luo's hands. Immediately, he turned his head around complacently, following the voice. He looked at Yiqing Luo. What else could it be? Isn't it because the Overlord has taken a liking to Rong? His complacent voice stopped abruptly. His eyes were so shocked that they almost popped out from his eye sockets. He opened his mouth wide as he raised his hand abruptly, rubbing his eyes. He looked over again. His expression was steely green. At this moment, everyone started to turn their heads over. When they saw the young lady behind them clearly, their reactions were almost the same as Miao Jingwei's. Shock, disbelief, astonishment. One by one, floated past everyone's eyes. The next moment, everyone stared fiercely at Miao Jingwei. You. Miao Jingwei was met with everyone's gaze as he retreated a few steps, with a frightened look. What about me? Yiqing Luo smiled as her eyes squinted. Miao Jingwei's heel bumped into something and he fell to the ground. He put his hands on the ground and kept crawling backward. Dizun, why is Dizun here? That's right, standing behind them was not only Yiqing Luo, who was dressed in a fiery red robe, but also Dimo Xian, who was dressed in a billowing purple robe. Dimo Xian's hand was tightly wrapped around the young lady's waist. It was a very possessive gesture. A pair of narrow peach blossom eyes stared at Yiqing Luo's side profile without blinking. The two of them just stood in front of them. Everyone could feel an overwhelming pressure pressing down on them. Cold sweat appeared on everyone's foreheads. Dizun was here. Then, who was the person inside the house? Dizun, Lady Yi. When Yin Yanxiu saw this, his face was filled with joy as he broke free from the few people surrounding him, as he took quick steps towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she lazily leaned into Dimo Xian's arms, giving a languid smile. Earlier I seem to have heard you talking about something. Miao Rongrong and my Xian? Only eldest young Miss Miao is worthy of my Xian? This sentence was obviously asked in an extremely calm tone. But when it reached everyone's ears, everyone felt a burst of chilliness. Chapter 2647. Everyone shuddered. Miao Jingwei was so frightened that he immediately knelt on the ground. The Overlord's words were obviously infuriated. Someone tried to salvage the situation as he said anxiously, that's right. Putting the Honorable Lord Dizun together with Miao Rongrong, that shameless vixen, is an insult to His Majesty. Overlord, it's all because of this second young Master Miao's fallacious words that we misunderstood. If it wasn't for Miss Yi and the Overlord's arrival, I'm afraid we would have been deceived by the Miao people. Overlord, the Miao people tried their best to make us misunderstand you. You must punish the Miao people severely. The crowd spoke one after another. Earlier they tried to please Miao Jingwei so much. Now how heartless they were. They were wholeheartedly trying to push the Miao people out, so that the Overlord's anger would not fall on them. But, no matter how they pleaded or complained, Dimo Xian didn't say a word. He didn't even look at them. His eyes were fixed on Yiqing Luo without blinking. His eyes were warm as though there was only Yiqing Luo in his world. Dimo Xian remained silent. The crowd felt a chill down their spines. All of them were shivering, almost kneeling on the ground to beg for mercy. Yiqing Luo gently held Diamo Xian's palm as she raised her head slightly, revealing a smile towards him. Her eyes were gentle, as though she was praising him. Diamo Xian's pair of warm peach blossom eyes instantly revealed a smile. Yiqing Luo squeezed Diamo Xian's palm once again as she turned her head over. The gentleness on her face faded away as her smile was tainted with frost. I wonder what Xian did to make everyone misunderstand? Her words had just ended. Coincidentally, Miao Rongrong's moan was heard from the bedroom. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her gaze shifted towards the bedroom. Everyone revealed an awkward expression. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Second young Master Miao, didn't you say that eldest Miss Miao was infected and bedridden, on the verge of death? How could she have such a good nature, to put on such a show? Miao Jingwei knelt on the ground softly, his eyes filled with terror as he looked at Yiqing Luo. Especially after hearing Yiqing Luo's question, his body started to tremble like a sieve. Yiqing Luo continued to smile. Since eldest young Miss Miao is busy, then if eldest young Miss Miao were to find out that everyone is eavesdropping, wouldn't she be ashamed to death? We will leave now. We were too rash. We'll leave now. Everyone couldn't wait to leave. Hearing what Yiqing Luo said, all of them seemed as though they were fleeing as their legs trembled, wanting to leave. Miss Yi, we didn't come here on purpose. Yin Yanxiu's refined and handsome face flushed with a tinge of red. There was an extremely strong fluctuation of profound energy in the Miao tribe's courtyard just now. We were worried that something had happened here, so we specially rushed over. We didn't expect that, he explained. He didn't want Yiqing Luo to misunderstand that he was such a dirty person. As soon as he finished speaking, a pair of cold eyes fell on him. Yin Yanxiu was stunned. He looked into the overlord's clear eyes. The Dizun's eyes were extremely cold, with a hint of hatred. She seemed to be extremely disgusted that he was talking to Yiqing Luo. Xian. Yiqing Luo sensed it as her little hand held his big palm tightly. Her slender brows creased as she raised her eyes to look at Diamo Xian. Don't fool around. Diamo Xian pursed his thin lips as his eyes were fluctuating with emotions. After some time, he seemed to be annoyed as he turned his head away. Yin Yanxiu looked at the overlord in a daze as a sliver of astonishment flashed past his eyes. Why did it feel like? Chapter 2648. Just as Yin Yanxiu was feeling puzzled, Yiqing Luo's clear voice interrupted his thoughts. Young sect master Yin. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly towards him. The profound energy fluctuations which you sensed should be released by me. Yin Yanxiu was startled. You? But didn't you just arrive? Hearing these conversations, those who wanted to flee the scene also stopped in their tracks. They sensed the fluctuation of dark force. Was it Miss Yi who released it? Could it be? What conflict did Miss Yi have with young Miss Miao just now? Everyone's gossipy hearts were stirred. Early this morning, second young Master Miao came to our courtyard to cause trouble, begging me to save their young Miss Miao. Xian and I came here, but we fell into Chief Miao's trap. He tried to use Gu on me and Xian. In order to avoid Chief Miao's trap, I had no choice but to use my profound strength and leave with Xian. Just now, I saw a group of you rushing over here. I was worried that Chief Miao would place Gu worms on you, so I came over to take a look, but to think. As Yiqing Luo said that, she took a glance inside the bedroom. The intense sounds were still going on. Miao Jingwei had knelt in her courtyard this morning. Butler Yin was also present, as well as other onlookers. If she brought Diamo Xian along and pretended that she had just appeared, it would be too fake. When they opened the door and saw Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong, he would only think that she was the one who had done it. Half-truths and half-lies came out of Yiqing Luo's mouth again. Especially when the overlord was by the side. Everyone decisively chose to believe him. I was wondering why second young Master Miao was so sure that the person who was having sex with Miss Miao was the overlord. You are trying to set the overlord up. No wonder he's been luring us. The Miao tribe leader wants to poison the overlord? Trying to use Gu on us? They want to turn us into their Miao tribe's puppets. Miao Jingwei found it hard to breathe under the pressure of countless comments. In the face of the crowd's accusations and hateful gazes, none of them could hold back. Some kind of yellow liquid spilled out from where he was sitting. The fishy smell made people feel disgusted. This is a trap set by the Miao tribe. Let's go. Let's barge in now and see what else they want to say. With that, a large group of people rushed into Miao Rongrong's bedroom. Among them, There were those who wanted to curry favor with the Dizun and distance themselves from the Miao tribe. He was also angry because he was used by the Miao tribe and almost offended the Dizun. Seeing that the crowd was getting out of control, Yin Yanxiu immediately stepped forward to stop them. Everyone, let's wait for young Mistress Miao to come and ask her questions when it's convenient. If we barge in now, it would be our fault. However, just as he reached the bedroom door, Yin Yanxiu's expression changed. That's not right, the smell of blood, there is a very strong smell of blood inside. The expressions of the indignant crowd froze. Yes, there was a strong smell of blood coming from the closed bedroom. However, Miao Rongrong and the man's voices continued. Under such a heavy stench of blood, he could still continue? Wait, don't you feel that something is wrong? The more they thought about it, the stranger they felt. We're outside and we're making so much noise. No matter how good the soundproofing is, they must have heard our voices. How could they continue? Could something have happened to him? Everyone looked at each other. Chapter 2649. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she pondered for a moment. Something is indeed not right, but it's not convenient for us to go in, so it's better to let second young master Miao go in first to take a look. Miao Jingwei, who was called out, suddenly raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo in shock. What are you looking at? Didn't you hear what Miss Yi said? Why don't you go in and take a look? A man kicked Miao Jingwei, lifted his collar and pushed him to the door of the bedroom. Under the pressure, Miao Jingwei could only brace himself and push the door open. The strong smell of blood assailed their nostrils. Miao Rongrong's cries, which sounded like she was going to die in the next moment, became clearer and clearer. Miao Jingwei's hands trembled. Pushed by the people behind him, he walked in with trembling legs. The door was pushed open. The messy and bloody scene in the house was reflected in everyone's eyes. Not a single part of the bedroom was intact. It was as if they had just gone through an extremely intense battle. This house had not collapsed yet. It was really sturdy. Miao Jingwei moved closer with the speed of a tortoise. He looked in the direction of the voice. No matter how much mental preparation he had. At this moment she couldn't help but scream. Almost subconsciously, Miao Jingwei turned around and was about to run. However, he staggered and tripped on the ground, his body falling heavily on the ground. His face bumped into something. The stench and nauseating stickiness made his face scrunch up. Miao Jingwei stretched out his hand, trembling as he tried to pry it away. However, what he held in his hand was a severed limb. Blood continued to flow out of the wound. Ah! Miao Jingwei was so frightened that he screamed and threw away the severed limb in his hand. When everyone saw Miao Jingwei's reaction, they couldn't hold back their curiosity and walked in. When the gaze looked in that direction, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. There were also some people who couldn't take it. They leaned against the wall and vomited. The scene in the room was truly unbearable to look at. Miao Rongrong was pressed to the ground. Her usually extremely beautiful face had long been deformed and was stained with thick blood. Her naked body was covered with scars and blood. One of his arms was severed from the shoulder. One of his arms was severed at the wrist. And the man on top of her was doing the most primitive of actions. His entire body was covered with densely packed bugs. Those bugs were still crawling in and out of their wounds. It was really disgusting. The bedroom was instantly filled with more than 20 people. His surprised voice finally attracted the attention of the two people. The man stopped moving and turned his head bit by bit. Everyone saw the face that was covered by densely packed insects, as well as the faintly visible white bones. Goosebumps broke out all over his body. The people present were all profound practitioners who had seen the world and had experienced slaughter. But this scene really challenged the bottom line of their tolerance. Just when everyone's stomachs were churning and they were trying to stabilize their image, Miao Jingwei was like a madman, desperately holding his head and screaming, "Impossible! How could the clan leader be devoured by the Gu formation? No, this is absolutely impossible." He raised his voice. Yiqing Luo expressed that she couldn't help but give Miao Jingwei a thumbs up. As expected of a pig-like teammate. She was still worried about what excuse to use to divert everyone's thoughts to the injuries of the Gu worms. Miao Jingwei had already given her a perfect excuse. This sentence was said by Miao Jingwei. Chapter 2650. As expected, when Miao Jingwei's words fell into everyone's ears, everyone immediately turned around and ran for the door. Was that a Gu worm? That was the Miao tribe's goo worm? Although they did not know goo. But it was also very clear. Once they were infected by a parasite, they would wish for death. Who would have thought that the Miao tribe's leader would be devoured by the goo worm? So it's the poison's backlash. Yiqing Luo took over the conversation and entered the bedroom with Diamo Xian. After taking a clear look at the environment in the room, her expression changed slightly. Miss Yi, no one is controlling this goo insect. You and the overlord shouldn't get too close to each other. No one knows what will happen if the goo insect gets close to you. Someone saw Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian walking into the house and immediately opened his mouth to dissuade them. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and saw Miao Yixiong grabbing a rag by the side and wrapping it around his waist. He didn't care that Miao Rongrong was also naked. Miao Rongrong woke up, and when she saw what was happening, she hugged herself tightly. Harming others will harm themselves in the end. Never thought that the venomous worms that you used to deal with me in Xian would make you suffer the consequences of your own actions. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yixiong indifferently. The flesh on Miao Yixiong's face rolled, and his voice was extremely hoarse. Bitch, Miao Yixiong, Xian and I will remember everything you and Miao Rongrong have done today. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her brows revealed a sinister look. So, as the price, Miao tribe leader and Miao tribe sacred maiden's position, I'll accept it. The flesh and blood on Miao Yixiong's face rolled even more violently. He clenched his teeth savagely as he pounced towards Yiqing Luo. Slut! How dare you! How dare you! Before Miao Yixiong could pounce forward, a torrential, terrifying, profound energy laid horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo. Bang! Accompanied by this loud noise, Miao Yixiong was sent flying backward. He slammed into the wall beside him. Rumble! This collision. The bedroom, which was already on the verge of collapse, suddenly collapsed. Countless rocks smashed onto Miao Yixiong. That palm strike almost took half of Miao Yixiong's life. Then when the house collapsed, he was smashed all over. He immediately vomited blood and fainted. Everyone looked at Yiqing Luo in shock. Diamo Xian's tall figure blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. His black hair danced in the strong wind. His purple robe fluttered in the wind. Miao Yixiong fainted. Diamo Xian then slowly turned around, his long arm once again hugged Yiqing Luo's slender waist tightly. His peach blossom eyes were filled with concern. He didn't hurt you, did he? Yiqing Luo's arms circled around his waist as she smiled and shook her head. No, Xian protected me very well. Diamo Xian's arms tightened. Soon Qinghao also hurried over. When he heard everyone's explanations, his face immediately darkened. Drag him to the Qinyu sect's dungeon. How dare you act so openly in my Qinyu sect? Qinghao was infuriated. The people of the Miao tribe are really capable. This sect master is not done with the Miao tribe. Poison Dizun? Trying to push Miao Rongrong to the overlord? If it wasn't for Yi Luo's quick-wittedness, the overlord was really poisoned by the worm. The one who had to bear the overlord's wrath was the Qinyu sect. How could Qinghao not be angry? How could he not be annoyed? When the guards who followed behind saw Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong covered in worms, they didn't dare to lift them up. Chapter 2651. The guards were stunned as they turned to look at Yiqing Luo. Qinghao was also slightly stunned. Miss Yi has some understanding towards goo worms? Miao tribe's future sacred maiden told me. Yiqing Luo smiled mysteriously. Future sacred maiden? Everyone instinctively looked towards Miao Rongrong. On seeing Miao Rongrong, who was covered in blood, they retracted their gazes. The current Miao Rongrong had lost both her hands and her reputation was ruined. There was no way she could take part in the sacred maiden selection. Furthermore, Miao Yixiong wanted to use goo worms to control the overlord. The Miao Gu family was a huge clan which had existed for close to 1,000 years. Shouldn't it be annihilated? Miss Yi is planning to change the dynasty? One of the slightly older men asked carefully. Yiqing Luo smiled as her eyes squinted. By then everyone will know. Saying that, she didn't continue to stay as she pulled Diamo Xian and left this courtyard. When they left, there were still people rushing towards the courtyard one after another. Probably not too long later, the entire North Continent or even Nirvana realm would all know about the Miao father and daughter duo's deeds. After leaving the courtyard, Yiqing Luo brought Diamo Xian and speedily turned to a corner. She turned sideways as she looked at the people who were heading towards the courtyard, as her lips curled into a faint cold arc. She didn't intend to let the Miao father and daughter duo die just like that. Not to let them see it with their own eyes. Everything they had spent so much effort for had become the possession of Miao Yi, whom they had always despised and despised. How could they be worthy of their unscrupulous methods? Now, she had more important things to confirm. Earlier, that black thread which was pulled out from Miao Rongrong's eyes. She specially smeared soul-chasing powder on it. With this soul-chasing powder, she could easily follow that black thread and find the person who controlled Miao Rongrong. Perhaps she could also find out who the mysterious person who had been in contact with Miao Rongrong was. But if she really met that mysterious person, could the current Xian resist against him? Lil Luo, seeing Yiqing Luo looking at him, Dmo Xian's handsome face, which was like a god, revealed a smile. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she raised her hands and cupped his face. She gazed deeply into his eyes. Warmth and joy rippled in Dmo Xian's eyes. The only thing that was missing was his devilish charm. Yes, the current Dmo Xian was no longer the Dmo Xian from before. Ever since Dmo Xian had helped her block the love goo and the heart separation goo, when she opened her eyes, she sensed that something was wrong with Dmo Xian. If it was any other time. When Dmo Xian opened his eyes, he saw that she was injured by Miao Yixiong. He would definitely pay attention to her injuries at the first moment. And he was angry because of it. However, Dmo Xian did not even utter a single word. He just looked at her with that kind of gentle and affectionate gaze. Moreover, he had become extremely domineering. He was extremely possessive. He couldn't bear to leave her even for a moment. Dmo Xian was ultimately still affected by the love worm. The first person he saw was her. So I clung to her. The first person he saw was Miao Rongrong. Would he also look at Miao Rongrong in the same way? This thought flashed past her mind. Yiqing Luo's mood instantly wasn't beautiful anymore. She should poison Miao Rongrong a few more times. Let Miao Rongrong suffer and not die. Daring to think of her man. Luckily, the first person Dmo Xian saw was her. Chapter 2652. I'm going to a place and it might be very dangerous. Xian, stay here and wait for me, alright? Yiqing Luo tried her best to speak in a gentle tone. Not knowing if it was her misperception. Somehow she felt. After Dmo Xian was inflicted with the love worm, not only was his attachment towards her, he had a stubborn persistence. His intellect seemed to have been obstructed. Using old man Song's words. That was Dmo Xian didn't know how to think about anything other than her. He also didn't know how to think about anyone or anything other than her. He only knew how to stay by her side, hug her, look at her, not leaving her side for even a moment. Even earlier in Miao Rongrong's courtyard, Dmo Xian said, "This lord is not blind," was muttered softly in front of Dmo Xian before she appeared. Seemingly, except when he was facing her. He could still converse normally. But in front of others. He didn't seem to be able to see anyone else. Unless the others were implicated and had something to do with her. Luckily he had a respectable status. And he was temperamental. Even if he ignored others, they wouldn't think that he was affected by the worm, and would only think that he was in a bad mood and didn't want to bother with others. No. Dmo Xian, who was inflicted with the love worm, still knew how to reject. "I want to be with you." An expected answer. What Dmo Xian was talking about was the love worm. It was the love worm that formed an attachment towards her. Which meant to say he wanted to see her at all times. Dmo Xian would not let her leave alone. Yiqing Luo tiptoed and kissed his lips, smiling. Then, "Xian must listen to me and follow me." Dmo Xian nodded without hesitation. "All right." In the end, he looked at her tenderly and added a sentence. "When we return, Lil Luo, will give you a reward." He raised his hand and his slender fingers pointed to the place where Yiqing Luo had kissed earlier. Yiqing Luo? This fellow, was he really inflicted with the love worm? What happened to the promise of listening to her? Why did he still know how to negotiate terms with her? Ahem. Old man Song coughed awkwardly in his mind. Di Zun is different from ordinary people. His willpower is also different from ordinary people. Naturally, he is different from other people who have been poisoned by the love goo. Yiqing Luo pinched Dmo Xian's handsome face fiercely. "All right. Reward." Dmo Xian immediately revealed a bewitching smile. "All right, let's go." Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian's hand and quietly left in the direction of the soul-chasing powder. The moment the two of them left the corner, a tall and slender figure slowly appeared at the place where the two of them had been standing. The man's facial features were gentle and refined, looking towards the direction where Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian had left. His brows were filled with pain. He raised his hand and pressed it against his chest. He had finally fallen in love with a girl. That woman, she already had a fiancé. He could tell. Yi Luo really loved Dizun. It was obvious how much the Overlord loved Yi Luo. But, because they loved each other, that made his heart ache even more. The man closed his eyes slightly. His breathing was painful and weak. Master, tell me, how should I overcome this tribulation? Stay away from her. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind. The man was startled and quickly turned his head around. What entered his eyes was a handsome man dressed in red robes. Although that man was dressed in red, but he emitted a sharp and icy cold aura, as though he had walked out from an ice cellar. His entire body was emitting a keep-away aura. Chapter 2653. That red-clothed man was Zhu Wuxin. Young sect Master Gu, she's not a woman you can dream about, Zhu Wuxian warned coldly. Gu Jingyu's body stiffened as he stared blankly at Zhu Wuxian's expressionless face. Death God Castle's castle master, you also? Zhu Wuxin's cold eyes swept over and Gu Jingyu's words were stuck in his throat. That gaze was as sharp as a blade, as if it wanted to leave countless scars on his body. Gu Jingyu's heart thumped fiercely. This time, Gu Jingyu was completely dealt a heavy blow. He had originally thought that the woman he had taken a fancy to was the only woman in this world that he felt was worthy of him. But unexpectedly, in fact he was not worthy of her. Her fiancé was Dizun. There was also a Death God Castle Lord who was her admirer. In comparison, he wasn't even worth a fart. Zhu Wuxin did not look at him again. He walked directly towards the direction where Yiqing Luo had left. Death God Castle's castle master. Gu Jingyu suddenly raised his head and called out to Zhu Wuxin. Zhu Wuxin's footsteps paused slightly, his cold eyes filled with obvious impatience. She loves the Overlord very much. Will you give her up? When Gu Jingyu asked this question, there was a voice in his heart asking him the same question. Zhu Wuxin didn't turn back. He continued to walk forward. The man's cold voice came with the wind. She will only be mine. Following the trail of the soul-chasing powder. Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian had already left Qingyue City. He had actually arrived, mass graves. The mass grave was extremely remote and dark. There was even a faint chilly breeze blowing past. Yiqing Luo had just neared this place when she acutely sensed that the airflow in the air was faintly mixed with some austere atmosphere. She grabbed Diamo Xian's arm tightly and quietly approached the direction of the soul-chasing powder. Did it fail? A cold voice sounded in a low voice. It was illusory and not real. Yiqing Luo immediately pinpointed the direction where the sound came from. She pulled Diamo Xian and leaned against the stone wall. Through the messy surroundings, Yiqing Luo could faintly see a tall and straight figure standing at the side of the mass grave. Fortunately, although Diamo Xian was poisoned by the love worm, his power was still there. The two of them held their breaths, not letting the person on the other side notice them. The man stood beside the mass grave. The air was filled with the smell of rotting corpses. It smelled awful and disgusting. However, that person didn't seem to be able to smell it. He raised an arm and seemed to be looking at something. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she clearly saw. That black thread was floating in that person's palm. His gaze swept to that person's face. His pupils constricted slightly. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold arc. As expected, it was him. Following the representative of the East Wave Continent's imperial family, little Princess Lan Ling Nuo. The bodyguard whom Lan Ling Nuo treated as her trump card, Serene Solitude. Ever since he saw the black lines in Miao Rongrong's eyes. Ever since he realized that Miao Yixiong seemed to have lost his mind. She had guessed that it might be related to Yuji. Because when they first met Yuji, she was on Yuji's body. She sensed a kind of profound yin qi which was similar to it. But Yiqing Luo was certain. Yuji wasn't the mysterious man who had been in contact with Miao Rongrong. Which meant there were at least two parties who looked for Miao Rongrong. Or perhaps Yuji and the mysterious man were in cahoots. Chapter 2654. The black thread was moving in his palm as though it was arguing about something. A thread like a living thing. It had its own thoughts. And it could talk too. Yuji. Yiqing Luo expressed that it was really a rare sight. Yuji paused for a moment, suddenly his fingertips pinched the moving black thread. If it's seen through, the mission will fail. How should I explain to the revered one? That black thread, the entire thread was twisted as though it was in extreme pain. Yuji seemed as though he couldn't feel the black thread on his fingertips as he coldly hooked his lips. The mission failed, it's all because of you. Improper control, apologize to the revered one yourself. That tone was obviously a threat. The black thread seemed to be struggling. No one was willing to bear the wrath of the revered one. But in the end it still succumbed to Yuji's threat. The entire thread body hung limply on Yuji's fingers. Yuji's lips curled as his eyes flashed coldly. Then go and apologize now. Saying that, he threw that black thread directly into the mass grave. Under the special imprint of the soul-chasing powder, Yiqing Luo could clearly see that black thread, which was like a strand of hair, was like a snake speedily swimming in the wreckage of the corpses. In the tranquil mass grave, Yuji's cold and ethereal voice rang, "Yuin, other than apologizing, don't say anything else." The black thread paused slightly. Immediately after, it flashed and completely left the mass grave. Yiqing Luo didn't immediately chase after it. Only when the aura of the black thread, which was the fellow named Yuin, completely disappeared, Yuji then slowly turned around, blended into the night and left the mass grave. It was silent for half an incense's time. Yiqing Luo then pulled Diamo Xian out of their hiding place. In the air she could still vaguely sense that extremely weak cold breath. She frowned slightly, a trace of blood-colored light faintly surfaced in her eyes, which disappeared in a flash. Hearing the name Yuin, Yiqing Luo was already certain. The black thread and Yuji were in cahoots. They were both the subordinates of that so-called revered one. That revered one, who exactly was he? What was his motive? Why, she always felt that this revered one was always pestering her. Could it be, she had something that the venerable one wanted? Little Luo, Suddenly she heard the man's displeased voice. The force on his waist suddenly increased. Her face bumped into the man's thick chest. She collected her thoughts and looked up. She met the man's eyes, which were filled with her reflection. A chilly wind blew in the mass grave, fluttering Diamo Xian's black hair. It also blew on his purple robe. On top of that peerless beauty, that tempting face of crime. This level of breathtaking, even Yiqing Luo couldn't help but be bewitched. Don't think about anyone other than me. The man was very jealous and his tone was very obvious. I don't like you to look at other people. Yiqing Luo burst into laughter. Could it be that he was jealous because she had placed all her attention on Yuji just now? He was poisoned by the love goo. He was surprisingly honest. Moreover, his honesty was adorable. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she raised her hand and pinched his cheek. Ever since Diamo Xian was poisoned by the love worm, she had not moved at all, and had her hands all over his face. If it was usual times, she dared to pinch his face. He dared to eat her up cleanly, not leaving any dregs behind. When they returned to the courtyard, she would look for Miao Yi to discuss about helping Diamo Xian to cure the goo. But there wouldn't be this chance in the future. It was rare that she could pinch him to her heart's content. Chapter 2655. I'm not going to look anymore, be good? Yiqing Luo beamed as she said that, as she tiptoed and kissed his thin lips. The current Diamo Xian. He was very easy to coax. As expected, after Yiqing Luo did this action, the jealous man's face immediately lit up with a smile. He held Yiqing Luo's petite body tightly as he stared at her seriously, saying word by word, "You have to look at me. Whatever you want to do, I can help you." Following that, he pulled her hand and placed it on his chest. The rhythmic heartbeat was beating against her palm again and again. His taut muscles were hard yet elastic. This wasn't the first time Yiqing Luo touched his muscles. But every single time Yiqing Luo couldn't help but blush. This is you, this is yours if it's me. The current Diamo Xian's thinking was very simple and extremely stubborn. Yiqing Luo wasn't displeased by the man's overbearingness. On the contrary, her smile grew wider. Old man Song had said this before. Diamo Xian, who was poisoned by the love worm, all his actions were the most direct thoughts in his heart. His overbearingness. His possessiveness. He was filled with love for her. Because of the love worm, it was completely magnified. This was also why old man Song wanted her to be the first person Diamo Xian saw. Otherwise, based on Diamo Xian's character, if he really had to depend on Miao Rongrong because of the love worm, she was afraid that Diamo Xian would rather die than listen to the erosion of the love worm. Because right now the person he depended on was Yiqing Luo. That was why Diamo Xian didn't resist at all, allowing the loveworm's corrosion. Yiqing Luo smiled till her eyes curved as her face blushed, making her elegant face look extremely adorable. Her face was like a peach blossom and her eyes were like silk. No matter which man it was, there was no way to escape. The charm that Yiqing Luo released, Diamo Xian's eyes locked onto her deeply. That pair of peach blossom eyes were overflowing with colors, resplendent and dazzling. Almost based on instinct. Diamo Xian lowered his head and kissed her smiling lips. Both hands tightened the strength he used to hold her. There was an indescribable feeling clamoring from head to toe. With a clamor, he swallowed the person in his embrace. Yiqing Luo naturally felt the rising temperature from Diamo Xian's body. Her cheeks turned even redder, burning hot. Damn it. As expected of a man. They were all poisoned by love goo. A man's instinct was still there. Ah Xian, alright, the reward has ended, we need to continue chasing after that black line. Yiqing Luo held Diamo Xian's hand and raised her head, interrupting his instincts which were being driven. Ah Xian still had love goo in his body. Being too agitated at this moment was not good for one's health. The man who had been interrupted stopped moving, but he was extremely displeased. His almond-shaped eyes didn't hide his emotions at all. His entire person had sunk into a very low-pressure atmosphere. His shoulders slumped and his face was filled with displeasure, as well as the kind of pitiful look that Yiqing Luo despised. Yiqing Luo felt, the man in front of her now looked like a canine pet. Moreover, it was a very cute dog-type pet. It made Yiqing Luo's young lady's heart swelled up. She tiptoed and raised her hand as she caressed the man's head, her voice was gentle as she smiled. Alright Ah Xian, accompany me to do something first, alright? Diamo Xian indeed looked like a dog-type pet. The moment Yiqing Luo's hand landed on his head, the low pressure which was lingering around the man instantly dissipated. Chapter 2656. Such a Diamo Xian really made one unable to hold it in. Yiqing Luo looped her arm around his neck as she spoke in a low voice. After we return, I'll give you a reward, alright? His obsidian pupils gazed deeply at her for some time. The man then nodded his noble head. His face was filled with displeasure. But his lips were curled into a smile. Yiqing Luo was all smiles as she rubbed his head. Just as she was about to lock onto the location of the soul-chasing powder. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt a chill down her spine as she raised her head and looked towards a certain spot in the darkness as she suppressed her voice. Who? Her voice had just landed. The arm around her waist tightened. She raised her eyes again and the man's tall and broad back view was in front of her. He stood in front of her, his peerless face was filled with seriousness. I'll protect Lil Luo. Yiqing Luo's fingers held his hand tightly as her 10 fingers intertwined with his. Following that, her gaze stared towards that direction. In the darkness, a figure was indistinctly discernible as it neared from afar. Very quickly, she saw the red-robed man's tall figure completely appearing in front of her eyes. Yiqing Luo's little head popped out from Diamo Xian's back and when she saw the person clearly, her expression congealed. Zhu Wu Xen? Why was he here? Had he followed her here? Then, didn't he have seen Diamo Xian's abnormality? Indeed, Zhu Wu Xen's icy cold eyes glanced coldly at Diamo Xian before falling onto her face. When he saw that only her little head was exposed. Her entire body was completely covered by Diamo Xian. That pair of icy cold black eyes seemed to be even colder. What's the matter with him? Zhu Wu Xen's voice was cold and hard. Turned silly? It's none of your business. Hearing Zhu Wu Xen's words, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. She instinctively dashed in front of Diamo Xian as she opened her arms wide and looked at Zhu Wu Xen vigilantly. Her subconscious action, which made Zhu Wu Xen's eyes dimmed. His complexion was slightly pale. The hands under the red robe were clenched tightly, as though he was restraining something. After a long time, he pursed his lips as his cold eyes continued to look at her. Yiqing Luo, you're mine. Your matters naturally concern me. Bam. A burst of dense profound energy chopped downwards. The man behind Yiqing Luo revealed a sullen expression as he waved his sleeves and struck out a hurricane. Zhu Wuxin's eyes turned cold, his figure moving as fast as lightning. That dark force directly smashed onto the ground. The entire mass burial mound shook violently. It could be seen that Diamo Xian had used at least 50% of his strength. Seeing that Zhu Wuxin had dodged the attack, Diamo Xian's face turned frosty as he waved his sleeves again, about to strike again. Yiqing Luo immediately pounced forward and hugged his arm. She knew why Diamo Xian was angry. At this juncture she didn't want Diamo Xian and Zhu Wuxian to have a conflict. After all, Zhu Wuxian now knew about what had happened to Diamo Xian. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge storm in the entire Nirvana realm. Those people who were unconvinced with Diamo Xian would definitely swarm over, hoping to take the opportunity to kill Diamo Xian and replace him. She would never allow such a thing to happen. Zhu Wuxian, don't think that just because you've saved me a few times, you can continue to think that you're infallible. I, Yiqing Luo, am not anyone's possession even if I also belong to Xian. Her pink lips pursed slightly as she looked at Zhu Wuxian with a resolute gaze. I will repay you for saving me, but please don't use this as a reason to disturb my life. Her words paused for a moment. Chapter 2657. In love there is no room for even a grain of sand. Your persistence towards me has caused me trouble and will make Xian unhappy. It wasn't that she was heartless. Facing this man who had a stubborn persistence towards her. Facing this man who had once shared a beautiful memory with this body. Facing this man who had saved her time and time again. To tell the truth, if they could become friends, she was extremely happy. But Zhu Wuxian's persistence. She really had no way to repay him. Love was a matter between two people. There was no room for a third person. If she didn't love Zhu Wuxian, then why should she give him any hope? This was the attitude towards her and Xian's love. The most correct attitude towards Zhu Wuxian. Yiqing Luo's eyes sparkled with a red glow as she met Zhu Wuxian's eyes tightly as she said word by word, "Don't in the end, we don't even have a chance to talk face to face peacefully." The last three words came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Zhu Wuxian's body took a small step backwards. It was a very minute movement and not obvious at all. Don't? Diamo Xian's expression turned chilly as he pulled Yiqing Luo into his arms with a sunken expression. Yiqing Luo knew that the don't he was referring to. Not wanting her and Zhu Wuxian to talk face to face peacefully. Feeling the warmth from the man, Yiqing Luo automatically hugged his waist as her little hand caressed his back, placating the man as she spoke in a warm voice. The opposite sex around me, other than Xian who is my lover, the others can only be brothers or friends. Her words seemed as though she was explaining to Diamo Xian. In actual fact she was saying it for Zhu Wuxian to hear. Zhu Wuxian naturally understood what she meant. His expressionless cold face had a sliver of paleness. He was obviously expressionless. But between his brows, there was a chilly intent as well as a vicious air. Her words had infuriated Zhu Wuxian. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Wuxian's voice was chilly as the edges of his thin lips were extremely cold. Do you think that if I want you, I will allow you to be arrogant in front of me? Diamo Xian swiftly hugged her even tighter. His peach blossom eyes revealed a solemn vigilance. It seemed to be on guard against Chu Wuxin suddenly approaching. Yiqing Luo nestled in Diamo Xian's arms as the expression on her face was very indifferent. Looking at Zhu Wuxian's tall figure which was emitting a cold aura, she pursed her lips slightly. I don't have any self-righteous thoughts. I just want to tell you that your persistence is useless to me. He has already become a fool, and you are still unwilling to leave him? A few veins appeared on Zhu Wuxin's forehead. His eyes were very cold, and the lines of his facial features were also extremely cold. As he spoke, he narrowed his cold eyes which reflected a cold light. Diamo Xian's possessiveness towards Yiqing Luo. It was like a puppy protecting its food. There was killing intent. However, his aura was too weak. He looked like a fool. I think you're even more foolish. Her eyes were filled with anger. She couldn't stand someone mocking Diamo Xian. Xian did it to protect me, you don't know anything. I can also protect you. Zhu Wuxin stared into her eyes as if he could not see the anger in her eyes. This man, was he sick in the head? No matter what she said to him, it felt like playing the lute to a cow. I don't need your protection. Yiqing Luo no longer had the patience to continue tangling with him. She retracted her gaze and looked at Diamo Xian. Xian, let's go. Chapter 2658. Zhu Wuxian, are you trying to threaten me? Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she looked at Zhu Wuxian with a gloomy expression. Zhu Wuxian's narrowed eyes were deep and cold. I'm only telling you out of goodwill that this backing of yours has already been destroyed. If you're smart enough, you should think of a way to find a good next. Next. Yiqing Luo murmured these two words and suddenly laughed out loud. Her eyes were filled with ridicule. Chu Wuxian, your persistence towards me is only because of the warmth I gave you when you were young. She paused, raised her eyes and looked straight at him. There is only unwillingness. Zhu Wuxian's thin lips were still curled up. His grave and stern face was cold and had a faint trace of loneliness. I have never said that I love you. You are mine, so you should be mine. But I'm not yours. Yiqing Luo calmly interrupted his words. Zhu Wuxin did not speak. His hands were tightly clenched under his red robe. He couldn't describe what he was feeling right now. He felt as if a nameless flame was surging in his body, wanting to burn everything in its surroundings. Yiqing Luo's words were too ear-piercing. It pierced his eardrums and caused waves of pain. He wanted to seal Yiqing Luo's mouth, so that Yiqing Luo would never be able to say anything that he didn't like to hear. Then she would quietly stay by his side. That was enough. What? He couldn't control his emotions. Yiqing Luo was the only lady who could move his heart. Could it be that this was the love that Yiqing Luo mentioned? His feelings for Yiqing Luo were not only moved but love? This thought caused Zhu Wuxian to be startled. His pupils dilated unconsciously. The expression on his face was a little sluggish. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Zhu Wuxian's expression, which looked as though he had seen a ghost, and couldn't be bothered to bother about him. Aren't you afraid that I will really announce Diamo Xian's matter to the public? Seeing Yiqing Luo's back view without any hesitation, Zhu Wuxian's heart shuddered as he subconsciously opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back, nor did she stop her footsteps. He could only hear her cold voice, which was devoid of warmth. Just go ahead and say it. Even if Xian becomes the target of everyone, I will stay by his side and fight with him until the last moment. Zhu Wuxian couldn't say anything else. He stood there in a daze. His gaze was fixated on the direction where Yiqing Luo had disappeared. Yiqing Luo's figure disappeared for quite some time. Only then did Zhu Wuxin have a slight reaction. He slowly retracted his gaze and the frost in his eyes deepened. His heart was throbbing with pain. The pain made it hard for him to stand still. It clearly belonged to him, it was clearly his, he was just a little late, his things, but for another man denied their commitment. Chu Wuxian's lowered eyes suddenly flashed with a sinister light. Yiqing Luo brought along the furious Diamo Xian and quickly left the mass grave. He released his perception and sensed that Zhu Wuxin hadn't chased after him. She then stopped and hugged Diamo Xian. Diamo Xian's face was filled with gloomy clouds. Learning from Yiqing Luo's earlier actions, he cupped her face and directed her gaze towards himself, until he saw his own reflection in Yiqing Luo's pupils. Only then did his anger subside slightly. Why didn't Lil Luo let me kill him? Diamo Xian pinched her face, expressing his unhappiness. Lil Luo said a lot of things to him. Chapter 2659. I don't like him. Diamo Xian lowered his head and unhappily rested his head on her neck. The man's warm breath sprayed on her skin. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Trying to calm down his little heart, the small hand gently stroked the back of the man's head. Well, I don't like him either. Lil Luo can only like me, he said gloomily. Yes, only Xian. Yiqing Luo nodded seriously. Diamo Xian finally revealed a smile. He was disturbed by Zhu Wuxin. When Yiqing Luo went to search for traces of the soul-chasing powder, he could no longer sense the soul-chasing powder. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled slightly. Usually the reason why he could not sense the soul-chasing powder was, the only thing left was, water. The soul-chasing powder was something that could last for more than 3 days upon contact. The only thing that could get rid of the soul-chasing powder was water. The soul-chasing powder melted upon contact with water. However, what worried Yiqing Luo was the soul-chasing powder on the black thread rubbed off because the black thread drilled into the waterway, or was it discovered by the so-called Venerable One? If it was the latter, that mysterious sovereign and Yuji would probably notice it too. Their side might also be in danger. Doesn't Lil Luo have something to do? Why aren't you leaving? Diamo Xian saw Yiqing Luo's grave expression, and his shimmering peach blossom eyes floated a layer of daze. Not going, let's go back to Qingyue clan first. Yiqing Luo pinched the back of his hand. If it was before Dmo Xian was poisoned by the love worm. This matter, he could ask Dmo Xian for his opinion. When Dmo Xian went to the upper realm, he specially investigated the identities of Yu Ming, Yu Nu, Yu Ji and the others, as well as the identity of the revered ones behind them. However, for the past few days they had been showing off their affection. They had never discussed such a serious topic before. Now I want to discuss it. Dmo Xian reckoned that he didn't know anything about it. It was better to return to Joy Sect and ask Miao Yi how to get rid of the love goo. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had just stepped into their courtyard. She saw that Yan Xiaoyi and the rest had already set up their chairs and picked up their melon seeds, waiting for her to come back and gossip. Even the cold and aloof ghost martial artist was sitting in the corner. Facing so many pairs of interested eyes, Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes and asked directly, "Where's Yi and Xiangui?" As soon as they returned, they locked themselves in their rooms. Yan Xiaoyi glanced in the direction of Miao Yi's room, lowered her voice and asked curiously, "What exactly happened over at the Miao tribe? From what they're saying, it seems like they're suffering the consequences of their own actions after scheming against you." Just like what they said. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards. At this moment, it was not only Yan Xiaoyi who stood up. Even Xiao Jin and Peach couldn't help but stand up. They looked at each other in dismay. After some time, Yan Xiaoyi swallowed a mouthful of saliva and raised her thumb. "Qing Luo, beautifully done. Covered with goo worms. I really don't know how you came up with this idea, your taste is just too heavy." Xiao Jin trembled as he rubbed his arms. The both of them are father and daughter. The idea was thought of by themselves, I'm merely giving them a taste of their own medicine. Yiqing Luo gave an innocent and kind smile. Moreover, father and daughter, that might not necessarily be the case. Chapter 2660. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and blocked Peach's action. "I'm not too sure, but you should know Miao Yi's identity, right?" Peach rubbed her nose. "You already know?" Eh? Yan Xiaoyi recalled that quiet girl. "You mean Miao Yi?" She paused and muttered softly, "Miao Yi Miao Rong Rong? It can't be?" Yan Xiaoyi looked at the both of them, seeking for an answer. She saw the both of them nodding their heads. Yan Xiaoyi opened her mouth wide in astonishment. She had not expected this. That quiet girl who seemed to blend into the air was actually someone from the Miao tribe. Moreover, she was Miao Yixiong's daughter. It was no wonder that Miao Yi locked herself in her room after returning from the Miao tribe courtyard. That's right, they were saying that both of Miao Rongrong's hands were crippled. One side looked like it was cut off by a knife, while the other looked like it was bitten off by a magical beast. Xiao Jin winked at Yiqing Luo. "Don't tell me this was done by you?" Chi-chi. Yiqing Luo decisively betrayed her teammates, expressing that she wasn't that bloodthirsty. Chi-chi? Xiao Jin pointed to Miao Yi's room. "Earlier I saw your Chi-chi and followed her to Miao Yi's room. Speaking of which, ever since Miao Yi appeared, her Chi-chi had disappeared, and didn't return to the pet space. She could sense that Chi-chi was in a safe state. She thought that Chi-chi had bitten a disgusting human's arm and ran off to relax. She had not expected it to follow Miao Yi back. I'll go take a look at Yi's room." Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian and was about to head over. Suddenly a tender voice rang out, "Elder sister." Kitty Li, who had finally struggled free from Zomo's embrace, pounced towards Yiqing Luo's arms. Kitty's ears drooped down. Her tone was filled with grievance. "Sister, why ever since that frivolous man came, you don't bring me along for anything?" Saying that, she stared at Zomo's direction with her watery eyes. She just stared. That white-robed young man who was originally smiling evilly, suddenly froze as his expression sunk. "Little wild cat, be careful." What? Kitty Li was still in a daze, not understanding Zomo's meaning. The next moment, Kitty Li's black cat ears twitched as her strong sense of danger made her swiftly retreated backwards before she had even pounced into Yiqing Luo's arms. However, no matter how fast Kitty Li was, but the remnant power of the profound energy that attacked her still swept across Kitty Li. Kitty Li's petite body suddenly flew backwards. Kitty. Yiqing Luo didn't expect that the man beside her would suddenly make a move. Kitty Li was about to fall to the ground. Yiqing Luo's gaze turned cold as she immediately pulled Dmo Xian's arm away from her waist and was about to rush over to catch Kitty Li. A white figure was even faster than her. Kitty Li's body softly fell into Zomo's arms. Look. Kitty Li's face was slightly pale. Just the aftershock alone had already caused her to suffer some minor internal injuries. If it wasn't for the feline beast's instincts that allowed him to dodge first, he was afraid that he would lose his life there. Zoemo looked at the pale expression of the girl in his arms. His usual devilish phoenix eyes were filled with a gloomy and cold intent. He clenched his fists tightly as he looked at Diamo Xian with a gloomy and raspy voice. "Overlord, what do you mean by this?" It wasn't hard to tell. He was filled with rage. Yiqing Luo was about to head over to check on Kitty Li's condition, but her wrist was held tightly by Diamo Xian. Chapter 2661. Diamo Xian's hand tightened as his expression turned gloomy and his eyes were deep and cold. Not aloud. He spat out 2 words coldly. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes. "Ah Xian, I'm angry." Her gaze was very calm. Her tone was very calm. On her face there was no expression at all. Diamo Xian held her hand as it trembled slightly. His deep and cold aura dropped and instead added grievance. "You can only be hugged by me. She's my sister." Yiqing Luo flung his hand away. This time, Diamo Xian didn't dare to hold her tightly. After Yiqing Luo struggled free, she immediately walked towards Kitty Li. She sensed that the man behind her was walking towards Kitty Li. He also lifted his feet, trying to chase up to her. But he immediately stopped in his tracks. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back. She knew that Diamo Xian was poisoned by the love goo, which was why he was like this. But she wasn't going to leave him hanging. In future he would still make a move on her brothers because of this. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand his attack. She must let Diamo Xian know the seriousness of this matter. Walking towards Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo fed her a medicinal pill to treat her internal injuries. Kitty Li nestled in Zomo's arms. Her petite body was like an obedient kitten. She sneaked a glance at Diamo Xian, who was behind Yiqing Luo. Her pale face didn't blame him but was puzzled. "Sister, what's wrong with Overlord brother-in-law?" Everyone present could tell that something was wrong with Diamo Xian. Yiqing Luo caressed Kitty Li's face as she gave a warm smile. "Kitty Li, don't be afraid, there won't be a next time." Her hand had just landed on Kitty Li's face. The surrounding air had obviously turned cold. Everyone looked towards Yiqing Luo's back in unison, and after that, they all started to shiver. Yiqing Luo straightened her body slightly and glanced sideways at Diamo Xian. That icy cold man who was overflowing with viciousness, as though he was going to destroy the heaven and earth at the next moment. Just because she had glanced at him. Instantly, he lowered his head as his anger was completely restrained. Seeing this, Zoemo, who had been livid, could not continue to be angry. "What's wrong with Dizun? In order to save me, you blocked Miao Yixiong's forbidden goo technique." Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past everyone present as her pink lips spat out the words, "Love goo." Everyone was stunned. Didn't those people say that you and Dizun are fine? How could the Overlord? No matter how strong Xian is, he's still human. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyelids. "His current situation is a little special, don't be angry." Zoemo frowned as his gaze swept past Diamo Xian. "You're looking for Miao Yi just to ask about the cure for the love worm?" "Yes." Yiqing Luo took a look at Kitty Li in his arms. "Bring Kitty Li to rest for a while. When she wakes up, she'll be fine." Zoemo tightened his grip, took a look at Kitty Li and then at Diamo Xian. That pair of long and narrow red phoenix eyes slightly narrowed. "Seeing that he is injured, I will not argue with him about hurting the little wild cat." Saying that, he carried Kitty Li and took quick steps towards his own room. Everyone finally digested this news as they sized up Diamo Xian while asking carefully, "Qing Luo, that Dizun is now full of possessiveness towards you?" "He can't see. Other than me, if you get close to me you will be treated as an outsider." Yiqing Luo turned around and looked at the man who had been standing silently behind her. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."